Hi friends, and welcome to ScreenVomit, the only movie podcast for normal people. I'm of course your host, Kayla, and I do have two guests with me today, but guess what? I got a whole bunch of crap to tell you before I get to them. I'm doing gigs, baby. If you're listening to this when this comes out, I have some stuff coming up on Sunday, October 15th. In Elgin, Illinois, I will be there hosting a film screening in honor of National Coming Out Day. This isn't really sort of related to ScreenVomit. It's kind of part of the other thing I do, or one of the many other things I do, but it is film related. And it is me related, so I'll be there screening 2 queer short films and hosting a Q&A after one of them. I'm a little congested right now. Sorry if you can tell that. Also, same day, October 15th, I curated the pre-show for Black Hole Monoplex's Halloween screening. So that is both in person in Amenia, New York, and also live streaming. So if you want to see a little horror shorts block that I put together, picked out by me, if you live near Amenia, New York, you can go there or tune into their live stream at blackholemonoplex.com. I think it starts at like 6. Don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's around 6. Eastern time. You can check it out on their Instagram. I also put the link to that stuff, tickets to my Elgin screening and the link to the Black Hole Monoplex stuff in my link tree, which is in all my bios and in the show notes. Also, can you believe I have this much stuff going on? I've literally never had anything to do, and now I have 3 huge gigs coming up. My third thing, and this is really the big one, in my opinion, in my eyes. I'm doing what I consider to be my very first actual live ScreenVomit live gig. It's not a live podcast, but I'll be there hosting a curated shorts block that I put together, meticulously assembled. This will be at PDA in Altadena, California. This is just outside of LA. On 11/11, November 11th, I have put together a lot of films from past and future guests, some that are eps that haven't come out yet, of the pod, including Graham Mason, Harrison Atkins, Johnny Look, John Mackey. Alex Kavutski is making a film just for my screening. I have a couple other ones showing that are not released, including Johnny's movies, not yet released. So I'm really excited to be showing these. I'm nervous. I think it's going to be really cool. I think at least a couple of these filmmakers are going to be there, so maybe we'll do a little Q&A thing after that too. I'm going to have commie biscuits out there slanging cookies for some treats, and I think it's going to be really cool, really fun. I'm going to show so many really cool, good shorts that also starts, I think it's like doors at 6, show at 6:30. Tickets for that are also in my links. So I hope you come and don't make me regret it. Okay? Other than that, you can follow me on Instagram and everywhere else at ScreenVomit, one word on all this stuff. I have merch in my links, and I may also be having some new merch coming along. And I think that's it for my plugs. Now we can get to my guests. I'm so excited. I have 2 guests today. These gals have a movie called The Apology together. I have Alison star Locke and Kim Sherman here. Their movie, The Apology, is out now on Hulu and Shudder and all the places. It's a really cool horror movie starring Anna Gunn and Janine Garofalo. Oh my God, can you believe? So cool. So check out their movie. I mean, they also have, you know, a history of things they've done independently of each other. Alison has like a really storied history in reality TV. Get into some of it. She's also worked on like Real World and The Challenge and stuff like that. Kim produced a bunch of cool movies like Sun Don't Shine, You're Next, A Teacher. Like, these people have some really cool stuff in their past. And I get into some of it in the pod, some of their early, the deepest beginnings possible. And aside from even all that, I was just literally addicted to chatting flicks with these ladies we just could not shut the fuck up. So this episode is long as hell. But you know what? I think it's worth it. And I think it's so fun. And here it is. You guys just made a movie together.
Yeah, we did.
What is you guys' meet cute?
I wish we met at the grocery store or something for this moment, but we just met in the old-fashioned way where other producers brought us together over Zoom.
Nice.
Yeah, is that right? We met online.
Yeah.
We met, yeah.
As many people are doing these days.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was love at first sight.
Right on.
Aw.
Right on. Yeah, it was like, oh, I think we have a producer that, we'd love to, have you work with on this film. Would you like to meet with her? I was like, of course. I knew her previous work and tried not to fangirl through the whole meeting, just probably like a quarter of the meeting. And we just, we got along great right away and just have had a series of soulful, supportive, challenging, in the good way, conversations ever since.
Yeah, I want to say, too, when Allie and I did first meet, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about her story at all and just loved her from her enthusiasm, her ideas, and everything. And then you get to know Allie and you find out the things that she's gone through to get here, and it's just like deepens. It deepens.
Well, thank you, darling.
Hell yeah. So, Alison, this is your feature debut.
Woohoo.
What's that like? How's it been? I mean, it's so hard to get a movie made anyway, no matter who you are. But you did get a movie made, and it's a cool movie, and I bet that's just got to be great.
It is really great. It's really great. I just kept being constantly stunned that was my reality and that I got to work with people like him. It was just incredible. And it was also, I mean, like, I think it's always important for us to be honest as artists of what it's like. It's very, very difficult to make a movie. I don't know if you heard, but especially when, I was, just to give you a brief backstory, but I had stayed home with my daughter for a long time and had been writing. And so coming out of basically being a stay-at-home special needs mom to making your first feature with like this huge group of incredible artists was wonderful and overwhelming and challenging and so rich. Like, just what a gift.
And to go straight to Shudder.
And to go straight to Shudder and theaters
the home of horror.
And AMC Plus. Yeah. The Shudder news, Kim can tell you, like, you weren't there when I learned this, Kim, because I just had missed this earlier on, but they were like, and then when they were also on Shudder, and I just started crying. I was just like, I'm on Shudder. Our movie's on. I was just such a fan, because I remember, when I was pure stay-at-home mom, and it would be like my daughter would be at school, and I would write, and then I would watch a horror movie on Shudder. And, like, it would just make me feel better and more connected. And then I get to have my movie on there. It's pretty cool.
So you just were chilling at home writing all the time?
Yes, that was so basically I went to film school.
That's amazing.
I made short films. I worked in reality TV as a story producer. And then I stayed home with my daughter when she was first born because I was like, yay, you're fun. And then she turned out to be diagnosed with autism and needed a lot of help. And so basically I was her advocate and everything else, and then writing at the same time. And that's what I did for years.
I just think that's amazing because writing for me, I had a brief moment, a drip in history where I was like, it would be so cool to like write a movie or write shorts. And it is just so much, it takes so much more energy than I think anybody realizes who doesn't do it normally. I just think that's so amazing.
Oh, thank you. It does. It's so funny. It's like
you were like, I'm going to do this a lot.
I'm going to do it all the time.
I couldn't even write one short.
Well, I feel like I think writers that don't write are a bit dangerous, like not good for themselves or other people. So I just always had to still write, and I just have always. Yeah, ever since I wrote my first very awkward short film in high school. I was like, oh, I have to. Yeah.
I think I randomly had seen probably a few things that both of you worked on. Actually, my friend worked on a show called Stupid Face, Alison, which I saw on here. on your IMDb.
I don't know if Kim even knows about Stupid Face.
I was like, that's the most random possible thing to know someone from.
I am so impressed right now. So Stupid Face is this really, really goofy sketch show that also somehow incorporated skateboarding or something. Am I remembering this correctly? But my husband was at a sketch comedy group for years, and I basically produced all their shows. And so that also meant producing and directing and, whatevering for all of these sketches that they did.
So you
for
got
Stupid
wifed
Face.
into the Fuel TV show Stupid Face.
Kind of, because my husband and I very often are constantly just making, helping each other with what we're making. And some of that is The Apology, and some of that is Stupid Face.
She's got range.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, my friend Andre Highland, I don't know if you know him, but he played Tim Hutchins' character on the show a lot, and probably other characters. But anyway, that was like one of his big...
That's so funny.
Big breaks, I guess. I don't know if you call it a big break, but...
We were pretty psyched about it. We got paid to make things.
At the time, yeah, and it was like on TV, and that like felt like a huge step,
Yeah.
Whether or not Fuel TV still exists, or like...
I have no idea.
I don't know who can say.
But weirdly, we weren't asked to a second season. I don't know if there was a second season.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
It's madness, Kim.
I'm overwhelmed by the name Stupid Face and how that pins you. It pins you so. I can feel the era that show was made in. Like that title.
Yeah.
That title speaks volumes.
100%.
This was like, what was it, like mid 2000s?
Something like that.
2007
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's like the height of when I was just like constantly making shorts on the weekends. It was like, that's all we did, was just like make another short on the weekends. And yeah.
Have you always been LA based?
I have. Yeah, I went to USC and I've been here ever since. But Kim, you've lived you're from Missouri, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I started in Columbia, Missouri, and had a brief stint in Memphis, Tennessee before moving to Los Angeles. Yeah.
Nice. You also worked on a film called Box Elder, which past guest was on. Past guest of the pod, Kyle Ayers, was in that movie.
Yes, I did.
Which is now like lost to, I don't think it exists.
Kyle's a sweetheart of a dude. Yeah, it was.
Did you go to college with them?
No, they were a few years.
Okay.
Like we didn't cross paths at the university, but it was sort of, it's a college town that we lived in.
Yeah.
And there were just a few people that were really seriously and dedicated to making films, and you sort of just gravitated towards one another. I think I started out as like an AC on that. I was I was not first AC. I was maybe second AC, and then I was
down the tier
of
AC.
And then the AC got promoted to DP, and I became the first AC. And it was one of those things where the director would show up. I love him. I want to say that. So any of this is like, this was when we were children, and I'm sure. Yeah, but he would show up. Yeah, he would show up with like
same era, close to same era as Stupid Face.
Yeah.
So I'm really pulling out the deep ones.
So he would show up to set with note cards sometimes, where he was like, he would show up 3 hours late to set a lot of times, and we would have set up the camera and just played pranks on each other while we waited, and then he would show up with like these cards where he wanted to tell us how disappointed he was that we weren't making our days and what we needed to do differently, and we're like,
don't be 3 hours late.
Sure, let's all just show up on time and it'll be great.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
If everyone would show up on time, I don't know who it is who's not doing that, but
it was.
I'm not naming
We're
names.
all trying to figure out who this guy is that doesn't show up on time. We'll get to the bottom of it. Just stick together.
But your cards are really going to help out. The card thing is so specific to that era too, where you're just like, okay, I've got my tool.
It's a person who is incredibly friendly, incredibly likable, does not want to rock the boat with folks, does not like to be not liked, and suddenly felt like he needed to like have a come to Jesus conversation with us about punctuality and needed to write his thoughts down so that he didn't look into our poor faces and lose his mind.
Bless his heart. So from there to here, now you guys have this huge hit film. with all these big celebs in it. You got Anna Gunn, you got Janine Garofalo, you got Linus Roach. That's amazing. The cast is crazy. Janine Garofalo, I've been seeing pop up more in like these kind of smaller movies or like smaller casts or more indies when I feel like I didn't see her around for a second. Now she's I do.
Incredibly supportive. She's wonderful.
Rocks.
It was awesome to just be around her, and she's such a thoughtful, collaborative filmmaker. I mean, there are shots in the film that she suggested. Just she would walk into a room and just see something cool that she thought we might be missing, and she was just great. She was so lovely to be around every day.
She really was. And then on top of that, when I would take her suggestions, she would get like about to cry because somebody was taking her suggestions, and I'm like, Janine, who did you wrong, boo? Like, people should be listening to your big, beautiful brain.
We know who wasn't listening.
We know. The thing is, we know.
Yeah, we know.
Or we have ideas.
She paved the way for us.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
Yes, she did. And she brought all of that wisdom to every conversation we had, even if we were talking about cookies. It's crazy. Which we did talk about cookies a lot. It's sad that it is
still, for, like, people probably like 30 and over, it is still sometimes kind of monumental to have like female support or like feel heard as a woman or a non-man in entertainment in general, in film probably more especially, film or music probably most especially. It's sad that that's still true. Like that people are still having times of like, wow, like I'm a woman and like people are listening to what I had to say.
Yeah,
and
it's ingrained.
She's so deeply intellectual too. She just, you know, it's like the recipe for somebody to ooze confidence, and she does. And I think it's like a thick skin kind of confidence of like, you know, just perseverance and not letting anything stop her. She's amazing.
More powerful than any of us.
Yes.
So yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, the movie's out now. That rocks.
Yeah, go see The Apology. Watch The Apology on your own with friends, with lots of friends, many, many, many times. You can watch it, like you said, on Shudder and AMC Plus. And we're not plugging right now, but I'm just so used to doing this. Or you can buy and rent it on VOD. It also includes a making of featurette featuring my awkward self doing my first interview in an EPK.
Are we getting a physical release?
I think we're going to.
Yeah,
I haven't heard
there's
the
another
dates yet,
window
but
coming up where it'll be streaming on different platforms and then a physical release as well.
Nice. Hell yeah. So maybe by the time this is out, maybe it'll be time for physical. So yeah, that's awesome. All right. So just like movie life in general, your experience with watching movies, what is you guys' relationship with watching movies? Do you watch a lot? Do you have a type? Your movie's a horror, but you've obviously both worked in comedy.
Yeah. I like to think, as a producer, I'm definitely genre agnostic. As a movie watching person, it's definitely personal, so it shifts depending on what's going on in my life.
Yeah.
You know, for a while, for instance, after I'm a mom, and my son is 5 now, and I remember right after he was born, there was this clear moment where I could not watch scary, and especially scary with a child in harm in any way. And that really changed what I was taking in and watching from where I had been even just a couple months earlier. So for me, it's just, I kind of ride the waves of who I am personally at that moment, but definitely watch a lot, try to watch everything I can. And then there's times where people are talking too much about a film, and I cannot watch it with a clear head because I'm constantly reading and taking in what the discourse is around a film, and I have to have a little space from it. So like this film that we're going to talk about today is a good example of like kind of grateful I caught it after that wave of conversation because I could go into it without knowing at all what it was. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
I have that same thing. If people are talking too much about a thing, I can't. I gotta wait.
Yeah.
I gotta wait till I'm gonna be fresh and not have all these other thoughts in my head.
I do love when that happens. Like if I can avoid watching a trailer, I would much rather watch the trailer right after I finish the movie to help me kind of process it than I would, beforehand. But I'm kind of the opposite. If people are talking about it, I really do want to be in the mix of that conversation. So it always makes me want to watch it even more. Because then it's exciting. Like, for example, this is random, but I remember like about a year ago, I watched Fanny and Alexander for the first time, the Bergman movie. And that movie, of course, has been out for decades. So nobody wanted to talk to me about that.
Well, also, that's
and I was like lit up by it, and I wanted to talk to everybody about it.
That's such a film school movie also. So they've already talked about it and written papers about it. And
that's an extreme example. Yeah, but exactly. It's like everyone's like if I just one day went, you guys, have you ever seen this movie Taxi Driver?
Yeah.
They'd be like,
that's sort of the journey I'm working on now, or for the last couple of years have been, because I've kind of always been a person who I'm just drawn towards like the cult films, the weird stuff no one's ever heard of, that I found like I got a secret link to something, or you know,
like discovery.
Yeah, I love the discovery. I love the journey of like finding something. So but I've been like that my whole life. My dad was into cult movies and got me into it, so I've just kind of always been like that. But then I have missed all of the normal stuff that anybody else has watched. And like, so now the last couple of years have been more intentionally trying to be like, what are the movies everybody knows? And let me watch those so I have some idea what people are talking about when they reference this crap constantly. And like Scorsese movies were on that list. I don't think I'd ever watched one.
I'm even more excited to follow your account on Instagram and then your journey now knowing this.
Like, I want to see. Yeah, like I just rewatched. Well, we can talk about it later, but remind me. I just rewatched After Hours, and it just like blew my mind again. Or rather,
I just saw that for the first time like last year, and I was like, it's crazy how Scorsese is like so good.
It's weird.
Wait, hot take.
Everybody else is
guys.
like,
little
we've
guy
been
called
knowing
Scorsese.
this since like 1975.
He's good.
He's the next Martin Scorsese. Yeah. Well,
I'm like, watch out for this guy, okay? Because he's onto something. I don't know. He's got something here.
But I know what you mean. Sometimes it's like watching something that's like everyone has said is wonderful, and then it just exceeds your expectations so much that you're just like, I don't know where to put this.
But also, there's something
so
so beautiful and respectful about somebody discovering a director on their own without it being and coming to that realization in the most pure form, which is their own personal taste, as opposed to everyone in my life says this person is great and I'm gonna go along with the ride for a while.
And
totally.
I do have now, I think people carry a lot of shame around not having seen some bigger movies.
How
sometimes,
could you?
but
How could you?
I don't understand that either. There's too many beautiful things to watch.
But I feel lucky now, or like they feel like they're going to be stupid if they ask about something. But I feel lucky now because I, have established myself as someone who knows a lot about film, but only like a very specific like niche of film. But I'm really smart on like this one weird shit. If you need something weird, you need short films, like I got you. So I found now people who respect my opinions and my knowledge, but still will be gentle with me and help me through the things that normal people know without treating me like I'm a stupid idiot.
Yeah, it's that whole thing.
I'm lucky that I have that for me.
We need to it's 2023. Let's just stop it. Stop that. Let's stop the
truly
shaming people for not having seen something that we think is great.
Yeah.
Be open to the idea of sharing something you love with someone who's never seen the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so
That's
exciting.
what I always say.
Yeah, as a film nerd, it's like, what's your favorite thing? One of your favorite things is like to share something you love with a friend who's never seen it. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm also lucky because I like all this like weird random shit that I have this podcast to force people to talk about it with me. So
we should have picked Franny and Alexander.
Next time, you guys, sequel.
So that I don't have to have the thing where I need other people around me to be talking about it, because I can just force somebody to sit down with me and talk about it.
Brilliant.
So you know what? This is all for me, and I love this.
We're your new most supportive friends. We're here for you in this journey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alison, did you feel like you got to answer the initial question?
What was it about?
We kind of took over the conversation.
No, I love it. I was loving what direction it was going in.
I just want to make sure that you also felt heard on your journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty similar. I mean, I went to film school, so I watched most of the film school movies and all of that stuff, but and then I I've always been an indie film fan, just like whatever weird specific kind of thing I can see, and then got really obsessed with horror movies about 15 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. So now that's my chief obsession, but basically Shudder and Criterion is like mostly where I live. Like
hell
trying to watch as many, but I'm always like trying to find more, I think every nerd is trying to find like more, the unseen gems, right? Like what films need us to talk about them in public.
Absolutely.
Yes, like spread the word. Yeah. So you will best believe I will be sending you emails being like, do you know of movies that are like this? Because that's the
you
other
totally
thing,
can.
Like,
that's an open invitation to anyone. I love it when people ask me for recs, and I might have to think about it for a moment.
Yeah.
But I love coming up with lists for people.
Well, that's why I was like, let me not ask her on the pod. I'll just email her later so she can use her big, beautiful brain to come up with a cool list of stuff. The other thing, too, I do is that I definitely watch films, I think as every filmmaker does, like around whatever you're creating at the moment. Like I'm writing a haunted house story right now, so I'm just enmeshed and
trying to get inspiration.
All things around that. And remembering like why you love this kind of movie. Like what is it about it that you love, and what is it about it that you feel like hasn't been explored that you can make your own, Yeah,
and maybe trying not to do the same stuff that everyone has done already.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes. I think half of the conversations I had with Kim was her going, it's okay, Allie, it's weird enough.
Maybe not weird. Not weird. There were lots of conversations about it not being dark enough.
Yes.
No, it's very specifically dark. I'm like, this film is about pedophilia and murder. Like, it doesn't get darker, truly.
It's pretty dark.
It truly doesn't get darker.
No.
It's very scary. It was surprisingly scary to me for basically being a movie that has two people in it for the majority of the movie. I felt very scared.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice.
That was surprising to me. I just didn't expect to be so scared.
You were right, Kim. Nothing to worry about.
I don't think that you have anything to worry about.
We should deliver the film now, then.
It was good.
Right?
I don't know. I feel
Are we locked?
there's
Did we
still
lock
a few
it?
things that I want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into what we picked for today. We picked the 2020 film Apples, some of that freaky Greeky film. This is the third Greek weirdo film that I've done on the pod for this year. They won't be exactly in order, but it's just kind of random that it's happened that way. So this is written and directed by Christos Nikou, who people will know from being the AD from Dogtooth, famous Yorgos Lanthimos film. He also has a short called KM that's pretty cool. This is his feature debut, so you guys are having a kinship here.
Yeah.
Having a feature debut. This also stars Aris Servitalis, who was in Alps and L that I've done on the pod now. He's also in KM, the short.
He's the go-to guy.
He's the go-to guy, and for good reason. I mean, he's amazing.
Yes.
Also, a couple of deeper credits. Cate Blanchett is the executive producer on this movie, which is like the most random thing on earth. And Stavros Raptis, who co-wrote, produced, and was the casting director on this film, was also the casting director on Elle, which I've done on the pod, and casting director on Triangle of Sadness, and acts in the film Elle, which I just said I did on the pod. So that's the cast and crew that I have to mention, because everyone else is just in Greek stuff I've never heard of. So, all right. So this was on my list. I don't know if you guys picked it off my list or you picked it at random. At random? That's amazing.
Kim picked it at random, yeah.
Hell yeah. So Kim, do you want to say again, because you kind of said it before we were technically inside the pod, why you picked this movie?
So I know it did not come out last year. It's a film I saw last year. It was my favorite film that I saw last year.
I think actually it was released, it got its U.S. release last year.
So my favorite U.S. release of last year. It's a film that I knew nothing about going into it. It was recommended by probably my most tasteful friend when it comes to film recommendations. And I trusted her wholeheartedly, and I was so glad I did. I saw it in a theater here in the LA area and left just like hardly able to talk to people because I just wanted to sit and process the film and be with my own thoughts about it. And so now, probably a year later, I'm so
you're
ready to talk about it with the two of you.
Hell yeah. And so, Alison, had you heard of this before, or what was your
No,
reaction?
I mean,
No.
I trust Kim's taste implicitly, and so she said, watch this film, and to the point where when she suggested it, I was like, well, if you love it, let's say this is the movie, and then I'll watch it, and we'll see. She's like, no, Allie, watch it and make sure you want to talk about it, But yeah, no, I was really struck by it. It has such a unique tone, and such a unique way of approaching this kind of story. I was really stunned, and the lead performance is really, he really does he does a real tightrope walk of trying to, maintain the mystery, maintain the sort of what is he living with? Is it grief or amnesia? All of these sorts of things, and I think he did just a terrific job. And he's absolutely, this is such a cliche director thing to say, but man, he has a face you just want to photograph the hell out of.
He does, yeah. As evidenced by him being in every movie I'm doing for the podcast this year.
I completely understand why everybody's like, my turn.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly how I found this movie, but I feel like the poster had something to do with it, because the poster is so cool, where
wild.
it just looks like an apple peel and it turns into his head. I don't know, that just looks sick. It's very
it's very cool. And one of the things that made me the most anxious about the movie was that he would constantly peel an apple in his hand, like not on a plate. I was
That's
like,
such a mom.
how do you not cut yourself?
That is such a mom response.
It is.
But I noticed he never peeled an apple quite like how it is peeled on the poster, which I was a little disappointed about.
I know. His game
He's
wasn't
chunking it off.
He was he wasn't taking the peel off. He was just taking the pieces. Yeah, it's true. Disappointing.
So I was disappointed by that. But no, so I feel like the poster is what drew me to this movie, and I love all the Greek films that I've seen, some of whom have crossover with this movie. So, I just was drawn to it for that reason. But this sat on my list of movies to do for the podcast for a long time, and nobody had picked it. So last month, finally, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to watch this movie because I really want to see it, and nobody's picking it. And then look, you guys picked it right after that.
This is great, because you and I, this was second watch for us, and Allie, it was first watch. And I do think it's a different film on second watch. I mean,
I think so too. But no less engrossing, entertaining. I liked it on the first. You liked it on the first.
But I feel like I'm a different person watching it a second time.
100%. Well, I think anything that has any sort of mystery or any sort of self-reflection like that, it's like that makes you want to rewatch it even more, and it really has a lot of reward for it. I just rewatched it. I watched it the first time when we sort of set the appointment for this, and then I just rewatched it night before last, and it is.
So we've all seen it twice.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm way too thorough a Girl Scout. There's no way I would have watched it once.
That's awesome. Okay, so as far as critic scores, this movie is great. 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, 82% of Google users gave this a thumbs up. I have a plot summary. Would one of you like to read it?
Allie, do it.
Sure, I'll do it. Yeah, send it my way. Here's the plot summary for Apples.
You can do a voice if you want, a trailer voice.
I know. I wish I was any kind of a performer. As an unpredictable, sweeping pandemic causes people to develop sudden amnesia, a man finds himself enrolled in a recovery program designed to help him build a new life from scratch. His treatment, performing daily tasks prescribed, always a hard word, prescribed by his doctors on cassette tape and capturing them with a Polaroid camera. Also, can we talk about the crossover of cassette tapes in Our Film versus Apples? Just kidding.
Yes.
Not the important thing to discuss. It just
We're both using analog technology.
The lo-fi.
Are they even real memories if they are not on cassette tape somewhere? Or Polaroid?
Yes, exactly.
Well, something we can discuss. Let's just start with the visuals of this movie, how it looks, and then we'll go into the story. Well, first of all, it's gorgeous, just plainly.
Yes.
I really thought this movie was gorgeous. I love the coloring, but also it's shot in a 4:3 aspect ratio, which is, not full screen, which is the same aspect ratio as Polaroid film, which is part of that choice there. But also they wanted to have a more nostalgic approach, so older TVs are in this ratio, and that it's literally called the portrait ratio. And Christos wanted to create something that looks more conceptual, but with the portrait ratio so that we focus on the main character and not the world, because it is more of a character study, so that we're a little more tight on the character also. So I just thought that was kind of a cool background on the aspect ratio.
That is some cool background. I think, it's funny that you say that, though, because what this chief stuff that I remember, obviously, apart from this incredible face that we get to see a lot of, and all of that expression that he brings to it, but it's also like the way that he looks so oppressed in his world. I actually kept thinking about all of those beautiful wide shots of like just buildings way above him, and the way that he exists in the spaces that he is. He doesn't seem comfortable anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and having that tighter shot can amplify that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the contrast of those two, I thought that was very compelling.
Yeah, there was a lot of choreography between his movements and the cinematography in general. Like there's these little moments, like when I don't want to get too far ahead, but like there's a moment where he sticks his foot out to stop a door from closing so he can get in the building that's locked. And it's this Chaplin-esque, like, his leg fully extended in the most awkward way out, and so the person has to kind of walk over his leg to get past him, but he does it with this kind of faux confidence and this vulnerable daring of like challenge me if you will a little bit. Just his physicality is wonderful, and it's captured so well with the patience behind the lens as well. Just the way they follow him, the focus that they choose, the things they choose, like the
camera loves
letting
him.
other characters come and go, and just knowing that person went. We don't have to like see the whole world and see where they're going and see everything around us. It's not important that this is the world.
Yeah. I think that on that, this film does do a really great job of bringing you into a strange world and giving you just enough so quickly that you have all the information you need, and there aren't a lot of questions, even though there's not a ton of information given. So, like, they have an amnesia-based pandemic going on. People are getting amnesia left and right. We don't have any details about this amnesia-based pandemic. We don't know what's causing it, where it started, exactly how widespread is it. We can kind of glean that it's ubiquitous enough, it's around enough that people are aware that it is existing, that it is a problem, and they're kind of learning to live around it. We also don't know the main character's background for most of the movie. Really, even at the end, we only know a little bit. We don't know where he's coming from, what's his deal. There's no flashbacks to his earlier life. Does he have family? Like, there's no voiceover. Nothing of that sort. So we really come in with almost no information. But they give you just enough setup that I felt comfortable. I didn't feel unsupported in the film.
Yeah, it's really clear by a stripped away backstory that this is about taking a human being at face value and experiencing life and emotions with them in real time, as opposed to coming in with any preconceived notions of who they are. And I think that's one of the things that I loved the most about this film is it is, you feel the awkwardness at the beginning. It's clearly a man in grief and disarray. He's in a place that's very sloppy. He's shuttered in to his space. There's no sunshine. There's hardly any light. And he's slouched and watching television. You get a sense of some routine with him, but it seems like a begrudging sort of routine. And you do catch pieces of the world as they go. Like we get very quickly to see someone instantly inflicted with this amnesia and what happens, the chain of events that happens once somebody's inflicted, and the way the woman reacts to, it's a man has crashed his car a little bit, or, parked his car in the middle of traffic, and this woman approaches him and says, "Can you please move your car?" And he doesn't remember that it's his car. He then clearly doesn't know where he is and who he is. And she just sort of calmly takes it in and knows what she needs to do next, which is to call the ambulance. Yeah. And so she's
like, "Oh, okay. You just wait here. I'll take care
your
of this."
point,
yeah, she isn't panicked. No, she's knows
this
the
is what we do.
Yeah.
It's just first responder kind of situation, and you can tell that it's like a person who has probably done this before, and this is routine in their lives. And him watching it too, he sort of just walks past it with no sense of, this woman's got it. I don't need to interact with this or engage with this in any way. And it really does seem pretty commonplace. And I love that juxtaposition. For us as an audience, it feels outlandish. And for everyone that's going through this, everything is so clinical and routine.
Yeah. For them, it's normal. Yeah.
And I found it really impactful on two personal levels, one of which I think, is of course universal, which is we've all been going through this pandemic and it's been going on for years. And of course, we're figuring out how to to live with it. There are programs that weren't there at the start, those sorts of things. They obviously all have flaws, but they're attempts. But also all of the the bureaucracy of it and the exams and everything just struck a chord with me, with all of my daughter's treatments and assessments and things like that. And the way that it felt very harsh when they were talking about you have amnesia, your scans are clear, but here we are. And so, okay, now we go on and you might not ever see anybody that you love. Okay. Just just that kind of dryness that so often will exist in sort of bureaucracy and the medical community, which mostly we've had lovely experiences with. But there's definitely some of that I think comes from a place of exhaustion, right?
Yeah, or they see it all the time and they forget that you haven't seen it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. That's this guy's first time in that bed, but for them, they've said this to 200 people or whatever. Yeah.
I work in I'm not a doctor, but I work in the medical field. I work for a health department in STDs and HIV, and see the same thing in my in my coworkers. Often it's we're used to talking about a lot. Even with STDs and HIV, especially there's so much stigma surrounding it that a lot of people are not even comfortable talking about any of it, sex, physicality, anything. So, we talk about it with each other all the time.
Sure.
there's no filter, and we're so used to it that I do think, I see that in my profession too, I guess is all I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think I imagine it's a pretty universal feeling, even apart from the COVID experience. It's there's a lot of these things where times in life when you are put in a very vulnerable position and the people around you are just too used to the reality of it to be as empathetic as they should be.
I find that the times that I've been in those situations, though, too, there is something almost comforting about people treating something that is seemingly shameful with a little bit of matter of fact, this is life. We are human beings. Our bodies break down and things happen. And there is nothing to be ashamed of in this moment. So let's just talk about the reality of what's happening to you. And I think especially in what you're saying, Kayla, about the conversations around STD, there is a little bit of being an advocate for people and being an ally for people that comes with, I'm going to talk to you in the most real terms because there's no reason for us to sugarcoat this because there's nothing for you to be ashamed of in this moment.
100%. Yeah. That's what I was thinking too when you were saying that. I was oh, that's actually kind of a time when it's kind of good to be there's nothing wrong with this. Let's just talk about it.
I think ultimately it's beneficial, but there does need to be a little bit of a soft padding. Yeah, sensitivity.
I do think, though, when we're taking it back to what we were saying about, first watch versus second watch of this film, one thing that I was really struck by and kind of took a note on was the first time I watched this, you're just kind of following this man into this world and trying to get as much information about not just him, but what's going on. And then when you go through the film and you come back to it and you know what's going on, it is such an opportunity to watch what this man is doing with this character and the layers of it with the, he's not giving anything away, but he's also not hiding his intentions at all. The clues are laid out, they are laid bare for you to know that this man is, he's seeing an opportunity and he's fully taking it. And, it's so fun to go back and watch it and to pick up those clues. When he first meets his temporary roommate when he is in the hospital and he's gone through all the analog documentation of the Polaroids, the triplicate forms that have been filled out. And he's sitting in this room just, eating an apple and talking to his new roommate about their experience and what happened to them, how they knew they were inflicted. And you can see that he has not much to offer as a story, but that he's picking up on what his roommate is telling him happened to him so that he can then use it with the doctors in the next scene.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, it's just the way he stays ahead of the audience is so appreciated.
I think probably even, third or fourth watches could still be pretty rewarding on this film. There's always a different way to interpret, or another depth with which to interpret.
Yeah, who are you when you're watching
doing.
it? What is the feelings that you're bringing to it? I mean, that's the thing about these films where you go in with this like kind of clean vessel of a human being as the lead character. It's like you kind of do get to project yourself and how you're feeling in the moment on this person.
Yeah. I think also it's interesting that because we're not given any background on him, and then like basically pretty instantly he quote unquote loses his memory, whether or not he actually goes through losing his memory, that's a different thing. But that kind of also gives us a blank slate to determine how much of his memory is his personality, which I think is something that the film is addressing ultimately as a theme. So I just think that's like a cool way to do it in a further way that not giving us a backstory on him benefits the movie.
Yeah, you get these little clues with him and with the woman that he ultimately befriends, with like when the doctors sneak into his apartment and taste his soup, and it's such a good soup. And you get the sense that like, it's a little bit of like on first watch, you're like, rules of the amnesia. They don't forget craft that they were, particularly apt at.
How much do they still know how to do?
And then on the second watch, when you know that he's sort of bluffing the system a bit, it's just that, it's just such a beautiful, like, and he was so good at making comfort food. And you get a sense of who he was. And when she's, there's a moment where they're hanging out together, and she's standing on her hands, and she's discovered that she can stand on her hands for 4 minutes, or what she thinks is 4 minutes. Yeah. And she must have been a gymnast. It's such an adorable moment, but it is, it's just these brief little scenes where you kind of get a sense of not only are they trying to figure out who they are going forward, but they're still trying to pick up the clues of who they were. And there's so much meaning to the smallest things in their lives as a result of having nothing. Yeah. The way they carry themselves, the way they cook soup, or how good of a storyteller are they even, when she's describing the plot of Titanic to him. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. One of my favorite moments was her I think when we're introduced to her, right? When they're watching Texas Chainsaw, and she's fully watching it, like crouching behind the seat on the ground, and just keeps like, it's so compelling because you're just like, are you this sensitive, or are you this unexposed to scary movies?
Well,
it just gives you such a...
I'm heavily exposed to horror movies, and I still will watch that movie like that. Like I saw
Fair enough. It's important to remember that not everyone
Bones and All is the last movie I saw in public where it was like a squeamish event for me. I was sitting with a friend who had made the film, and I was trying so hard to hide my squeamishness because I was next to one of the filmmakers, and I could not help it, and I had my knees closed up to my chest, like hugging my knees, watching that film, and just still
for Bones and All.
Yeah,
have you seen it?
It is a deeply uncomfortable, beautiful, beautiful movie. It's one of my new favorite movies.
I didn't really remember it being like. Well, I'm not squeamish at all, though. Gross. I guess if you're squeamish,
did you block out the parts where they eat other human beings? You might have gotten up at those parts.
I'm a deranged little fucker, and I think that's
exactly
cool
right. To Allie's point, it's like she is squeamish as hell sitting there, and then his reaction to it is like, "Oh, this is brutal," but it's not. But it's also like such a great choice.
We're proving the system right now.
Yeah,
I have to give.
I'm not bothered by like guts or shit or puke or like any of that stuff. I love it. I want to see more of it in film.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not really a horror person.
Really?
I'm not really a huge horror person. I like something fucked up. I like something twisted. But like straight up horror, generally, not huge on it.
I so want to unpack that. No, it always makes me wonder, like, because then it's like, is that a conversation about what do you consider a horror film, or is it like that you feel like you see a lot of those kinds of things in totally different genres? Because it just seems, that's what I mean by unpacking, not like what's your personal baggage about those things or whatever it might be.
Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you.
No, and you weren't offending me at all. I was just fascinated by it. I was like, what does that mean?
You're our bread and butter.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, there's a certain part of me that goes, whenever somebody says, like, you know, what scares them, what doesn't scare them, I'm like, breaking out a notebook. Like, tell me.
I think I don't always love being scared in general.
That's good. And
I can watch stuff that's scary sometimes.
That's
I think it's probably good and healthy.
That's not.
I don't like being scared, but I like watching stuff that's twisted, that's dark, that has people who, if you met them in real life, you'd be like, this is horrifying. But I think, yeah, maybe I just don't like feeling scared. And I do, like, violence doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't want to watch, like, trauma porn or anything, but I have watched, I don't know, like, some twisted stuff that I think is fun. Or we mentioned Dogtooth has, like, some violence in it, or, like, ripping out her own teeth, or what's the other movie? We just did Alps for the podcast. The girl gets hit in the head with a bat. I
know what
I'm like squeamish just having it described to me.
Or yeah, I don't know. So like that stuff doesn't. Or I think of like The Firm. Have either of you seen The Firm, the Alan Clark movie?
Yeah,
wait,
we have.
There's two The Firms.
Oh.
Nope, I don't know. I have seen the other one. I was like, I love The Firm with Tom Cruise. That's not what she means.
Yeah, not the Tom Cruise one.
Understandable that we both thought that, because Kayla did admit that there's a lot of movies that everyone has seen that she has not, and I was like ready to just discuss
I think that's what my brain was doing. I was like, oh yeah, welcome to The Firm.
Yeah. What'd you think?
No, the Alan Clark one. This was a BBC TV special from the year 1990.
I'm going to have to check it out.
Ever seen it? That's just one that comes to mind because I watched it again recently, but it's very violent.
I see. I get you.
It's kind of about like two dueling soccer teams in England. So like it's actually soccer's like a big deal or whatever. And they're trying to sabotage each other.
That.
You know?
So I hear that's true. I hear it's the football of England. Yeah.
They whoop each other's ass a lot. It gets increasingly violent throughout the movie. They keep doing pranks. Well, pranks is a gentler term than probably what's actually happening. But they keep doing pranks on each other to try and sabotage the other team. And the pranks are like, you know, slit somebody's face open with a razor or light their car on fire or stuff like that.
This sounds like Lord of the Flies, but in public, like out in the city.
Yeah, basically, it's similar.
I'm a big fan of your choice of words there with these
prank.
These.
That's why I said it's probably a gentler word that I should use.
They just have a twinkle in their eye as they slit a guy's face open.
It stars like Gary Oldman, I think, but it's like it's old. It's like from 1990, so it's a young man.
That just made me laugh so much because I was picturing like Gary Oldman and Tim Roth.
Yeah, well, those are like Tim Roth is in Alan Clark's first feature, Made in Britain, which is also fairly violent. Not quite as violent, but he plays a skinhead.
What's that one called?
Made in Britain.
Yeah, I have seen that one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Way back in the day. Yeah.
That one's a little more of like a character study than like something really violent. But yeah, Alan Clark's kind of known for making really violent, bleak, fucked up British movies.
God bless him. Yeah.
King. Anyway, this is not Alan Clark podcast. How do we
It could be.
I'm just going to circle back around. I also wanted to say about the beginning of the movie, I think there's something really interesting about we see him alone in his apartment, and like I think it's the very next thing we see him do is walk out and see this episode of this person having this amnesia break, however
That's
you would
what
say
I'm saying.
that.
Like 30 seconds into the movie, the whole shit is set up for you.
Yeah, it's so efficient, but it also, I think, on the rewatch, it really struck me as like, oh, he like walked outside and went, oh, that's what I'll do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for the brainstorming.
Also, while he's in his apartment, which is very short amount of time, on the radio, you hear them talking about this memory clinic or whatever they call it.
He's going to let the government take care of him while he mends his broken heart.
Aww.
Well, damn.
This also, the whole grief aspect of this movie, the writer and director of this film wrote this right after he lost his father. So it was kind of coming from a real place for him that he turned into something insane, which is how you deal with stuff if you're normal.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful tribute to that, too. I mean, something I didn't get the first time that I got the second time, because of course you can't get all of the details necessarily, but just that routine of buying the flowers and then realizing at the end that those are flowers that he was taking to his wife's grave. It's just little pieces like that. And then you have to give it up for the government for coming up with these little tasks for him to do and to document, because it really does lead him back to his life in a sense, in this really beautiful way.
Totally.
This is my way of saying I want to get into what they made these people do.
Yeah. We want to get into the meat. Just wanted to make sure we hit everything before we get there. Okay, so I just have two more things on the theme and actually the title also before we get into what's going on with their program. Okay, so I mentioned that this was inspired partially by the loss of the director's father. The title of this film, Apples, is partially also attributed to his late father, who had a fantastic memory and ate up to 8 apples per day. But the second theme that I don't love as much, but is a huge part of what he talks about when he talks about this film, is sort of an anti-social media theme. So the second part of the apples thing is we store all our memories on this device that are made by a company called Apple. And all of our memories are there and all of our data is there in the Apple.
I think if you take the word apple out of that, it's a right-on theme. So
I just get really tired by anti-phone, anti-social media.
Well, here's the thing.
Stuff.
My son just celebrated his 5th birthday. We realized all of our photos of him, except for a few that we framed, all of them are on our Instagram accounts or in a Google Cloud folder, right? So I've tasked myself with creating photo books for our family because we recently lost a loved one. My husband's mom died last year. And, we started going through her archives of her family. She has 5 kids. They're adults now. She has grandkids. And it's just, there are pieces of some of the kids' childhood, the younger kids, that they just don't have any photographic evidence of because she lost a hard drive that had their childhood photos on it. And the older kids, everything was analog, analog. It was hard copies of photos, or it's on film, it's on negatives. It's, we were able to kind of rebuild their childhood with her. And I think it is loss that leads us to think about how important these tactile memories are.
Yeah.
And so hearing that, I know that it can feel tired, but he put it in this context this is the right context for that idea. This is, it is, and as we watch them go through these, rites of passage, if you will, in the film and document it, they're not necessarily documenting the actual acts of it. They're documenting how they felt afterwards. And there's just a lot to say about photos and what they mean to us and how we treat them and how we archive them and how we would feel if those things are gone,
Yeah. I totally get that aspect of it, of not having something tangible if you are going to have that stuff. But parts of other stuff he talked about was he went to a Nick Cave concert and he was everybody there was just filming the concert on their phones, which is annoying. But he's people aren't experiencing the moment because they're on their phones. They're not feeling what they're actually going through, or they're just doing stuff for the purpose of documenting it on their phone. Yeah, for the purpose of posting rather than having an experience that they're engaging with and creating a memory that they're going to live with and a feeling that they live with. They're basically avoiding emotion by experiencing the world through their phone.
Yeah, I don't believe that we should be telling people how they should collect memories or in what way. That's where the argument breaks down for me is people are doing their best.
But what you were saying, your point of not ever having a tangible thing, I totally get that.
Or just not having a reliable way to document your life. And and for us it wasn't even the photos themselves that mattered. It was the trigger effect. Like, what did these photos bring up for the family, and how therapeutic was it for us to talk about these memories? Like, after her funeral, we watched videos from our my mother-in-law's wedding, and it was, VHS, and it was very similar, filming to this, of just a fly on the wall capturing these moments, and families singing songs together and getting ready to marry off their daughter, and just getting to see this woman at the beginning of a marriage, that we saw the end of, so it's just those kinds of things. It wasn't even about the VHS. It wasn't about the photo. It was about like the conversation around what we were seeing, and how it made us feel, and how it was healing. I think some of the kids who had their photos weren't as abundant as others because of the lost hard drive. I think there was a lot of wonder still there. It's not to say that they didn't have any memories of the time, but it was just, you could see that there was a little less participation as a result.
Yeah.
But yeah, I this whole idea that, like, I don't know, just especially as filmmakers, to say that someone can't fully be engaged in the world around them and take film and photos of something, to me, is a little hypocritical. Because it's how we live our lives, I do think, like, there's actual scientific, there's data to show that, like, social media can cause depression and a lack of connection and all of these things, but it doesn't have to, and it's not necessarily how everyone's using it or how everyone's feeling around it, and
or even how the majority of people are using it or feeling
But I
around
do
it.
think, too, when people go through these traumatic grief moments, there is this sense of, oh, now I've figured out how to live life, and I'm going to tell other people how to live life.
Yeah. I think anything big like that does make you, reflect on your life, it does kind of cause that. It's interesting that you're saying all this, though, because I had such an opposite feeling of it, which is that it felt the approach of using the Polaroids and using these tapes, it felt so disconnected and so cynical to me. I really felt like they did a good job of you could see the human effort in trying to pick very human experiences, and that was part of the education or the, like, rebuilding. But it also just felt it was so clinical. But then I think that's also part of where the great tone comes in. There's so much humor in this movie that comes, I think, from this, like, just the absurdity of watching a man who can't remember how to ride a bike, try to ride a bike, and not just a bike, but a child's bike, and then pose, just like trying to pose cool on child's bike.
Yeah, I don't want to conflate what I'm saying with props to the way they're documenting things, because I think it has to be both. I think it has to be both things. It's a world that has recognized. No,
I'm just going in a different direction.
The importance of memory, because an entire world has had its memory wiped. And now they're not relying on, it's not clear what era this is in, because you don't really see phones when they get in contact with each other. It's not by phone. It's or they have telephones.
I think it's kind of an alternate universe.
It's like the phones don't.
They said it's somewhere in the recent past, but there's, like, they have iPads. There's, like, an advertisement for, like, a Memory Plus tablet in the background at some point.
But it's clear that they've gone to a system.
But there's no cell phones.
Yes, they've gone to a system that they've found is more reliable, which is Polaroids, which is the 4-track tapes that they're using when they play the music for the pop culture references. And I imagined that they watched Titanic on VHS somewhere.
True, that's true.
If not in a theater, on a projection.
Even the movie they're watching was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is like 1980s or 70s. I don't remember when the first one came out. But like I was saying before, and to your point, Allie, it's like, you're not documenting the actual event. You're documenting the person afterwards. And he does it with so little. It's like, you don't get a sense of his feeling at that time. Like, if I were to look at that photo and not have seen him do the trick or whatever, I would have no sense of how this man is feeling when he pops a wheelie or rides a little girl's bike in the park somewhere. So it's not at all about documenting emotion, but it is documenting, like, an event or the aftermath of an event, and that is only going to have any kind of resonance for himself, like a trigger for, like, how he felt when he did that thing, if he felt anything at all. Yeah.
And then the way that they describe some of the assignments too, where it's like, you go to there and you may touch the woman in any way you want or whatever. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, you get the sense that they recognize that human beings are transgressive, and they are, in order to be a complete human being, you have to have a dark side ultimately too, and some kind of regret behind you. And I love the way they describe some of these things as the easy part, where it's like the one night stand, you use a person, there's a car wreck, you know, like, it's.
So yeah, this program is spearheaded by two doctors who, what we're describing is that they assign tasks to the people in the program on a cassette tape, and each day, it doesn't really say what period of time passes in between, but whatever, every so often, these people are playing a tape and getting a new task assigned to them for what they need to go out and do, and then take a Polaroid of. And it seems like all of the people in this program have the same sequence of events, which get increasingly more detailed and a little more twisted as they come through. So actually, before they're even assigned anything, before you even know that this is a thing, there was sort of like a throwaway scene, which I picked up on rewatch, and on first watch, you would have no idea. But while they're still in the hospital, there is like a cutaway where you see the two doctors talking, and the woman doctor mentions having them go to a protest.
Yes.
She's like, I went to one in college. It was a great experience for me. And the guy's like, oh yeah, I'll have them bring a Molotov cocktail. Maybe they'll need it. And she's like, wow, that's extreme. I just thought they would go and like be in the crowd and create a memory.
Like, have a
He's
sign.
like, oh yeah. Okay, I'll write that down and I'll record it later. So like, you don't know at that point that like what is happening there, but on second watch I was like, that's so funny, and it's for no one watching this for the first time.
It is for no one watching this for the first time. It's also like part of the larger conversation of the government's role in this whole thing, and they're
stumbling through it. Yeah,
their callous understanding of humans and human nature, and it's. Yeah, they're
just like spitballing like memories they have in their personal lives that like felt like they meant something to them or sparked some kind of emotion in them.
And also, you know, that protest moment too, kind of for me, it sort of sealed the idea of the side effect of what they're doing too is that they are creating community in a weird way, like not at all their intention, but thinking about how we make friends and how we bond with people. And a lot of times it is over like what is common between us and what is not common between us, and how can we learn from each other. And they are giving all of these people these common rites of passage that will then create like ways for them to bond with people going forward and to have human or, you know, human commonality and joining.
'Cause you do also see like once he does meet this woman, the only thing they have in common is that neither of them remembers anything.
And that they've just seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. So like,
Great
okay,
start.
we have these two things, like let's run with that. But the more time they spend together, you do feel how it's empty. Like they're not connecting on any deeper level. They don't have anything to talk about. He even thinks she's kind of stupid.
I wonder about that
like.
because obviously there's the one night stand between them that he does not know is a part of the program at all.
I
think even at that point he was kind of
he lays in bed all night.
It.
They imply he lays in bed all night, clearly wide awake, thinking about what has just happened, and then goes to her home. And we don't know why he's going there. We never find out why. But then he clearly feels rejected when he discovers that A, she's not returning his calls, if you will, and B, he got used. And in hindsight, you know, like
because she was ahead of him in the program.
She was ahead, yes.
So she got the task first to have the one night stand, and then later on
to use somebody. Very specifically, the language is to use somebody
and fuck them in the bathroom after dancing with them, and then not talk to them again specifically. Yeah. And so then, like a couple days later, he gets that same task, and he goes, "Oh, I was part of the thing. I got played."
And it's you know it's. On second watch, you know, it's a man who his heart was broken when his wife died, and it's his first time opening up to somebody else, connecting to someone. It's a woman that he's like, maybe she doesn't know how to add seconds up to 4 minutes, but maybe it's her. And then he's rejected by somebody that wasn't his person. And we get to experience that with him. And then
Yeah.
I love when they ask him about it later. When the doctors ask him about, so did you do the sex thing? And he's like, yeah, I did it. I just was so drunk I didn't take a photo. But just humiliation.
And they seem sort of proud of that. Like, yeah, you got so out of control that you didn't even take a photo.
Yeah. But still very professional. They keep it very professional.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think it's also interesting, again, like, not to be too totally cynical about the program that they use, but because I think there's so much beauty to it, but the idea that it's like they've used these like things that like it's not requiring them to take someone home. It's like, go fuck them in the toilet. And the fact that they use the word toilet never stops making me laugh. But, you know, and also that they're using tapes and Polaroids. So something that, you know, it's not like they're having to post it to social media and learn what a computer is. I just thought that was so interesting just to see those, like, the process that they're using, that, you know, because they're not showing us some big global version of this pandemic. You're seeing these little bitty ways throughout. It was just so consistently smart and funny and weird. That Halloween party or costume party or whatever, can we talk about that? Like, can we talk about the astronaut costume?
The physicality again. The physicality of this man.
Yes.
First of all, the costume just in itself, an amazing costume to wear. I mean, it just was gorgeous.
The government provided that wonderful costume for him.
Like amazing costumes.
Our government would never.
No,
First of all, giving him an apartment, giving him all this stuff, setting him up with personal care, in-home care, basically.
I know. I would lose my memory just...
Our government would never. Yeah.
To have them pay for my soup ingredients.
Literally. But yeah, that costume looks incredible. The party too, there was a great joke where like somebody is dressed as Batman.
Yes.
And who loses his memory. Yeah. And they go, does anyone know who Batman is? Which is kind of a double like, do you know who this guy is? But also like literally, do you know who Batman is? Because none of you guys have a memory.
The setup of that scene is so gorgeous too, because it's making you think like, again, he is reminding you that he is one step ahead of you as a filmmaker. Yeah. And you're watching the faces of the people seeing, you know, with flashing lights across them, kind of a rosy glow. And you think at first, or at least I did, because the music is bumping, you think that it's a bunch of people watching a DJ. And you just see the reflection in his helmet, but you can't tell what's going on. And it's just flashing lights, etc. And then the music stops and it cuts to what they're actually looking at, which is a man in a Batman costume sitting in the back of an ambulance with first responders trying to figure out if anyone knows who he is, because he's clearly the latest in the amnesia epidemic. And he just stays ahead of us every second of it. And it doesn't feel like we're being put on, or it's just like a joyful ride through what he wants to show us.
Yeah. There's so much like for being like ultimately kind of a sad story, or like a hardship that many people are going through. It is also really funny throughout the film. So it's like a really great tone. The director calls it a melancholic smile tone.
Perfect description.
I like that.
Yeah, perfect. He said he was inspired by The Truman Show initially, where it's like a sad story, but it's also really funny, and it has this comedian in it who's being dramatic, and there's like this weird cross tone that is awesome. So he was like, I love when the audience can laugh and cry, and sometimes at the same time. And I also love it as a viewer. So that was also the movie that Truman Show, the movie that inspired him to become a filmmaker.
Which is also something that is such a gift you get when you have experienced death near you of this. I mean, I think we all know life is very difficult and harder for some than others by a lot. And I don't believe in toxic positivity of just, you know, forcing yourself to be happy all the time. But there is something that you get in the way of protection and sense of humor when you have seen some things. And this feels like such a...
It's the yin and yang.
You can feel the reaction to grief is such a personal thing from the filmmaker.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was just a depth and a tone that I really loved from this movie, too.
We're just all smiling at each other. You can't see this podcast.
Well, because I was just thinking
a chill, pensive smile.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. It's like I was just thinking about all the, like, so many of the funniest people that I know. It's because because they've seen so much loss or so much hardship or whatever that you just, you appreciate, like you're talking about that beautiful story about Pitter, where you're talking about that, watching these things together as a family and thinking about feeling gratitude for what you got to have together, that I think when you have hardship like that or loss, it really amps that up for folks.
Or just this idea. Yeah, thank you. And the idea that, a lot of our great comedians in this world are people that have a lot of darkness in them.
Yes.
There's a lot of whatever it is, there is some pain that the humor is covering. Not covering. You hope it's not covering. You hope it's a solve of some kind. But
it's processing.
You're working through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I think it costs you something to be creative. So,
yes.
There's that too.
But I think you were saying you've had a lot of these, like, the Greek weird wave films, and they do tend to have this shared tone of, very bizarre, clinical in some ways, but the humor coming out of the clinical presentation of these things. And it does feel like there is this melancholy with a smile that kind of stems through all of it. And just such a counterpoint to blockbuster movies that have superheroes in them and just very convoluted central sci-fi premise. And this one just does it with such simplicity and performance and
such beauty, such grace.
Yes. Such patience.
I do find that this just in the I don't know if you would say genre, the wave, the Greek weird wave films, I do find that this is sort of an outlier to me. Like it feels a lot more gentle and a lot more sad and emotional than I guess most weird wave movies that I've seen. And I also think the director hates that term, but that's neither here nor there.
It does feel like he's trying to.
I find it is an outlier.
Yeah, he's trying to share something and connect with people in a way that the others tend to not really respect as much, I think. I don't know of a graceful way to say it. It's not that they don't care about their audiences, but that's not the point.
Yeah, that's not the point. Yeah.
I'm more quiet on this because I don't think I've seen a lot of the Greek weird wave. Like, are you talking about, like, because I haven't seen Dogtooth.
Oh my God, you got to watch Dogtooth.
Yeah, I have to see that. But yeah, see, there's always, like, exciting gaps.
Yorgos Lanthimos is pretty much the king of it. That's, I think, what most people associate with the genre is just Yorgos films.
Oh, so gotcha. Okay.
Dogtooth, Killing of a Sacred Deer, The Lobster.
Love The Lobster.
And the cadence and the way people talk in this film is really similar to Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer.
They're usually a little more deadpan, a little absurd, but also typically have some kind of commentary on society or on Greek government or some kind of larger issue, but they're also, really deadpan, typically a little more violent than anything you see in here. But it's all delivered really deadpan and not connected with, like, a huge emotional reaction, even when what's happening would be, like, traumatic to somebody or whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
That's just an explanation off the dome.
I appreciate it.
Come to your own conclusions.
I know. Well,
and if you want to see a small cast Greek weird wave movie, watch Elle. I feel like nobody in the world's seen it except for me and the person I forced to do it for the podcast coming up.
Is it just the letter L or like the name?
Just the letter L.
Okay.
Just the letter L. It also stars the same guy, but most of the movie is just him in a car by himself or in a car driving up and talking to other people. The majority of the movie is him in the car. He doesn't get out of the car.
Awesome. So double feature it with Locke. That'll be a good time.
Well, it's better than Locke.
I just have a connection to that movie because we have the same name, so.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
That's not a good movie.
I was comparing it in my mind to Your Own Movie, which also has a very limited cast.
Yes, that's true.
But makes great use of having a small space and a limited cast.
Oh, well, thank you.
So that's where I was connecting. I didn't really like the movie Locke at all, but that's
a whole other discussion, which I do want to have with you, though, because I really liked it, so I'm curious. But yeah.
I find it's very, you either love it or you hate it. I don't really think
extreme.
There's a lot of people who are in between.
Yeah, I get that.
This is very similar to the way Allie and I would share references for her film. There's like we're on such opposite ends of the spectrum in some ways, as far as taste in films. And then there are these places where it just like perfectly collides, and we would dance around it of like, no, I hate that. I love that. I hate it. Oh, well, we could both agree that this is a perfect film. And so that's one of our references.
100%. It's so funny because it's like you're definitely a person where, like you say, we don't always agree on a movie, but I always trust your taste to be thoughtful. And that's really that's the exciting thing. Like talking to friends who are also cinephiles and filmmakers, it's like, if at least somebody's coming at it from a thoughtful place, like I want to check out the thing you dig, you know, like even if it ends up not being my thing, I just want to see what genuinely is like turning the noodle inside out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think it also sometimes harms I feel like it's not harmful, but if I want to watch more mainstream stuff, like I feel like Locke is a little more mainstream. It's got a main actor in it, you know, it just was a little bigger of a release. That because I watch so much like weird stuff where people are really trying a lot of stuff and really doing more unique stuff, that when I see it tried in something more commercial, I feel like they have never gone hard enough, or as hard as I've seen it from somebody who is doing whatever they want. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. I feel like that's a lot of the time when I'm watching horror films. As much as I love
the way
it, it's
sound pretentious.
No, I don't think that's pretentious. I think that's just like, is something really connecting with you? And sometimes like going as far as you could possibly start to picture, or being genuinely like shocked is a sort of, you know, I don't know, maybe that's too pedestrian, but it's like something that's really just getting to you. If it's not doing that, it's like, that's ultimately what we're always seeking, is something that makes us feel part of this human condition in a way that we wouldn't have, that we feel like we hadn't seen before, but still also manages to be universal. Super easy trick. Yeah.
Films are complicated. All right, so getting back to the movie, did we have anything else to say on the costume party? Or just that it looked cool as hell?
I mean, yeah, the way he walks in slow motion, like totally in this character. And then later when he's supposed to be listening to the tape, but he has this kind of noise-canceling helmet on, and he's just sort of dancing like an astronaut in slow motion by himself in his new apartment. Like... It's vibing. Just these moments of levity that you need in all the slowness, and it's one of the best moments of it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You get a sense of who he used to be. Like, you really do.
Yeah.
And later when he's dancing at the club, they go to a club, and that's like where they, you know, go have sex in the toilet, is, again, I gotta say toilet, he is so cool. Like, he's sitting there with, like, he's dancing well with a cocktail in his hand, which, as a clumsy lady, I really admire that when anybody can pull that off. And it's like, he does have a sort of coolness to him. Like, you get a feeling like his apartment, if you looked deeper, probably had a really great vinyl collection or something. Like, he has this sort of sophistication and this sort of like, I don't know, this special way about it. But man, the choice of that astronaut costume, it was one of those things, like, it was so good that it reminded me of, like, in film school, we studied the Dead Poet Society a lot. We talked about Dead Poet Society for probably too long. But one of the things they talked about was when the writer Tom Shulman, I hope I'm not butchering that, wrote it, that when he was writing that, I don't know if you remember this, especially because I don't want to assume, since I know you're catching up to some of the...
I have seen that, I think, in high school. But I think we watched it in school, actually.
Oh, okay. There's probably, because I think it was popular to be taught in school since it takes place at a high school. But there's this moment where it's like I think it's Ethan Hawke gets a desk set from his father for his birthday, and it's the same desk set every year. And it's like, it just tells you, that whole family that quickly. It's so smart, and it's telling you so much about the world. And so whenever I feel like I've written something that just is really getting that quickly, I always call it a desk set moment. And so for me, that astronaut suit was like such a desk set moment, because it's like, it's telling you so much about what it would feel like if you were trying to walk through this world with grief, or walk through this world pretending, basically being an imposter, pretending to be somebody who, you know, who doesn't know what he's doing when he does know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And also is just visually so damn interesting. And it's such a nice suit. It's not a shitty costume. Like they spent, like we said, they spent money on that costume. Why did they spend so much money on it?
And that's the
You know
thing.
what I mean?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's choices like that. It is a smart choice, and it's a smart choice for the first time you watch it, and it's a smart choice with a different meaning entirely on the second time you watch the film.
Layers.
Every choice they make, because you're seeing and experiencing so few objects in this film, and people. So this cast is relatively small. The locations are few. The objects are few. Every one of them has to count in a fresh interpretation on either side of that viewing.
And yeah, every little thing that does happen in this movie does add something. There's not really any fat. Like every choice, the wearing of the costume, every little thing that happens adds another layer to what's going on. So it was a really good use.
And our clues as to who this guy is or was.
Yeah.
You feel like on first view, you're along with him as he's trying to figure out who he is, until, for me, on the first view, he's eating the hot dog in the park and the neighbor dog recognizes him. And that to
there
me,
was one little moment before
the
that.
address thing in the market, where he just says his old address.
I live up the street at 135. Yes. Oh, sorry. I mean
number 8. Yes, exactly. The one with the dog where he because that one to me was like, oh, is he getting a little bit of memory back? And then the one that seals the deal is like he proactively throws the hot dog to get the dog away from him because he sees the neighbor coming. And
he calls the dog by name too. So he knows
very
the
clearly
dog.
hiding from the neighbor.
Yeah. I think on second watch, that's what made me do it, because Kim and I chatted a bit after I watched it the first time. And I was like, well, I don't know if it's clear for sure that he's not amnesiac. Is that the term? And then rewatching it, I was like, oh, honey. It's very clear. It was interesting because we had kind of a conversation about how I kind of went off into a sort of sci-fi film expectation about government and how they're screwing us and all these things. And they're actually just like, they're just not doing right by people or whatever. And she was like, really, go back. There's like clear things that make you suspect it.
It was hard to have that conversation and not, because like, I want to be open to people interpreting art in different ways, but I was also like,
yeah,
that's not this movie though. Like, and I thought about it for a long time. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I thought about it for a couple of days of like, is there that interpretation? And then when I watched it a second time, it's like, oh, you would have had to have missed these clues.
Yeah.
To get to you would have to have missed this moment. This like, that's why every moment does really, like you said, Kayla, it's like every moment is so important, because if you miss one of them, you are missing a very valuable piece, and this puzzle does not work if you are missing any of the pieces.
I think you probably still could. Like later in the movie, there's a time when he's buying apples and then somebody says, oh, the apples are great for your memory, but nobody's buying them. I don't know why. So I think you could apply that to like maybe the apples are helping him get some memory back.
That's what I was thinking. I thought it.
But and also he's maybe running from something and doesn't want to get his memory back. But I don't know.
That was kind of where I was a little bit too, where I was like, is it starting? Is he maybe like the one that's starting to, have it start to come back? And again, because I felt like it's like, you don't know how long this pandemic's been going on. You don't know what they've been trying. But it really struck me, having seen my daughter go through so many different assessments and stuff, that it's like all they did was assess. They didn't actually try to do exercises before they just brought him go into a new life. And so that just felt so... let's just say not thorough of the government.
I think, Allie, that's an interesting perspective, and it's one that's clearly unique to you in a sense, and that and that makes sense. It's like your personal experience with assessments. However, I will say that like that interpretation also takes away one of my favorite parts of the character, which is his agency and the fact that he made this decision, and
it's such a better way of looking at it.
Yeah,
I like it more.
It's not better, but like it is what this film is. It is what he's choosing to escape his grief or try
yes,
to.
I meant also what a better way of approaching that story.
Yeah.
You know, because again, I think it's sort of like what we've talked about a lot in terms of what films we want to make. It's like there's movies that are like what I thought this movie was going to be. And then it was such a nice discovery to find that it was actually about this man's emotional journey and not about the big bad government.
But
which
also,
I love those too.
what is, like, again, it's comparing it to, like, you know, big superhero movies or something where that's what the movie would have been about. You know, like, it would have been about the sci-fi component of it or the twist or whatever. And that's not this movie.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, that's a nice relief.
This is a character who has made a clear decision, and we're watching him and going along with the ride. And it's a mystery for us at the beginning. And on second view, it's like, the clues are there. He's saying who he is. And we are watching a man run away from heartache and realizing he can't.
Yeah. Or that running away from one heartache just leads to other heartaches in different ways. Yeah. One of the things that happens next is the girl taking him to crash her car. I love that crashing your car was one of their tasks that they had to do. You don't know for a long time that that's what they're doing. I mean, you just know that they're driving. Also interesting that they remember how to drive.
Yeah.
But
all the things that they
then
did.
They go to crash the car.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It was like he was struggling with the bike and yet could drive the car.
Well, the bike was a child's bike.
That's
the bike
true,
was a child's bike. We
true.
do have to.
Give him a little bit of credit here.
Come on, don't you know how to ride something that's way too small for you?
He did spacewalk. He spacewalks like a pro. It's okay that he can't ride a little girl's bike.
Look, I just want him to do everything, okay?
But once they get in the car, like, the chick instantly knows how to turn off the wipers and stuff.
Well,
like, there's not a lot of
instantly.
like.
That's the thing. It's like
it takes a second.
There is some muscle memory that they're depicting a little bit for her, which again, it is a little foggy on the rules of the memory loss. You know, like if you don't know that he's like playing a part in this, why does he know how to make soup so well? And then with her, it's like she remembers really physical things. Like she remembers how to stand on her hands for 4 minutes, and she remembers these like kind of, and all of them, it's like they all have their moves, you know, when they're dancing and things like that. Like
it's just interesting, like how did they make the decisions on what, because like they can walk, they're potty trained, you know,
exactly.
Like, they could have gone, you know, all kinds of ways.
Yes,
with
exactly.
this, but
what the things that they've chosen to allow the people to remember are just as important as the things they've forgotten, and it truly, and then. There's this other clue in that car ride where they're having a road trip, and of course they're singing songs, and he knows every word of the song that they're listening to. He chooses the song. It's clear that it has a memory for him, and he clearly gets caught. She's like, oh, it's interesting that you know all the words, but she also knows how to drive a car.
Because he was almost doing it like subconsciously.
Yeah. And he looks so caught. He looks so caught.
He does look caught. He looks caught as hell.
It's his reactions to those moments that I think really kind of seals the deal of...
Every moment where somebody has accused him of having a memory.
Yeah. He's like, I have no memories. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he gets a look or like...
Oh, you're right. That's strange.
Like he's almost like irritated. Don't say I have memory. I don't.
It does. And it looks like at times like a very just kind of instinctual teenagey thing. Yeah.
Mad at himself for showing emotion.
You can definitely get into some stuff too about the gender aspect of that too. Like how, you know, about how it is to process grief as a man in that way, especially because he is sort of this very put together, very masculine presenting person. I don't know. I think that's interesting too. I mean, that you can't process it to the point where you just run off.
Men would rather lose their entire identity and house and life than go to therapy.
Yes.
It's like just clean your living room, dude.
Call an old friend, man. I'm sure you have one. That's always the saddest thing when the wife goes first, is always those stories where you're like, so what'd you do this week? Nothing? You didn't call any friends? Well, I mean, she used to call all the friends. Like, oh, dude.
Yeah. That said, I feel like we're dealing with an incredibly sensitive man in this.
Oh, of course. I don't want to it's just, it was like a factor of it that did affect me.
Yeah, no, I'm just, as a counterpoint and something for us to discuss.
I would say most men at least have the ability to feel.
Well, I'm not saying, so as we're discussing this film, and pointing out who this man is and what kind of man he is. He is a man who very naturally has some pretty nurturing qualities. And I think that, you know, him volunteering to go on this trip with this woman and sort of be her guide, it doesn't seem like it comes from a flirtatious, like she's a hot babe place. It comes from a very like helpful place and, you know, a true... She
said that she had to do something difficult.
Yes.
And would he accompany her to do something difficult? She didn't say what it was, but just setting it up that way would, like, if you had that caretaker sort of tendency, you'd be like, oh yeah, I'll be there for you.
And he doesn't overdo it. It's always like, and the way he approaches strangers, everyone is, you know, he's not effusive, but he is, he's kind. He's a very like clearly kind person. Like, you know, the neighbor dog likes him. The old lady in his building likes him. He's, you know, he looks concerned when people are hurt, or, you know, he seems to be very observant and paying attention to the world around him and the people in it in a very compassionate way. And
I think the other thing is that he's deeply lonely too.
Yes.
So just having the level of companionship is, whether or not he's trying to fuck, whether or not he's trying to smash this lady.
Wears it on his sleeve. He wears it on his sleeve without it overwhelming him in a obvious way.
There's a great peacefulness to his version of grief that I feel like I don't see in movies as often. Like there's usually there's a lot of sort of, and obviously part of it is because there's this pretending thing that he's doing, but it's so subtle and was very effective.
His version of hysterics is leaving his apartment and never looking back.
That's also, I think, what a great classic thing to do in a story, because that is something I think most human beings have fantasized about doing at one point or another. You know, that
the fugue state.
There's a certain thing of like, I just wish I could just not have to worry about any of this, you know? And then very quickly, most people 1 second later go, well, no, because I would lose all of these other things that I love about my life, and just not just this moment where things feel like the walls are crashing in. But I thought that was so brilliant to do that in the context of this huge thing, when we have all, I think, all felt as a people that there's a certain amount of like, I would like to run away from all of this horrible stuff that is going around. You know?
I mean, I don't know how many times in my 20s I'm like, oh, I'm just going to move to a different city. That's how I'm dealing with this. And I didn't, but the idea was in my head.
Well, you did a couple times.
No, I lived in Columbia, Missouri for 18 years, and then Memphis for 3 years, and then LA for 8 years. That's who I am. I stay.
But you at least got to expand a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A tiny little bit.
Yeah. All right. Next task, the most specific task yet. So the tasks have gotten increasingly specific. The next one is their journey to going to the hospital to find a person who is dying, befriend them over a time of several days or weeks until they're dead, spend every day with them, go to their funeral, stay with their relatives. It's so specific and unhinged.
It's my favorite one, though, for sure. I mean, I think because it's so like, that is like teaching you how to be a human being, for sure. It's like building you up into connection and seeing people through hard things and learning the steps of that. Like, I remember, this is so, I'm ashamed of this, but also I was so young, I was learning. One of my best friends in college, her father died, and I just sent her flowers. That was it. And she didn't hear, I was like, oh, she needs space. Again, it was a genuine thing of like, you just don't know what people need if you haven't been in that position yet and you're so young. And so it's like,
you just don't know.
Now I know. It's like, now you know what to do when a friend is having loss or having a hard time. You know how to show up. But that's such a crucial part of learning to be a person, is learning how to show up for people. And I thought that was so beautiful that they not only picked doing that, but they picked doing it in a way that you're investing in a relationship that will never pay off in that, beyond that experience, you know?
I think that's exactly right. It's like you get a sense of, I mean, as you go and as you're watching this and it's a program and it's meant to be somewhat therapeutic, albeit it's very cold and clinical, you still wonder with each of these tasks, what are they meant to gain from this? And some of it really is like popping a wheelie so
Yes.
so much joy from like trying and failing and then succeeding at something. And you see the guy on the street who's singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which is for musicians, for any human, that's like one of the first songs you learn as a kid. And it's clear that he's very terrible at playing it.
He's trying so hard. That was so funny.
And it's meant to be this like public, it's almost like publicly humiliate yourself a little bit. You know, it's like a public performance. Put yourself out there because it will make you stronger. And it's also the shared experience, but also it's a foundational song as a musician and an artist. It's, you know, teaches you some basic chords. It's like, you know, there's just so much to be gained from that. Yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a pretty universally terrifying film, so it's a great choice. I mean, I think you have to be pretty... I'm not going to make any judgments, but I can't imagine the person that would not be scared by that film.
Exactly. It's one of the most effective
I don't want to meet
films.
that person. And then Titanic, which like, it's very affecting, and she's talking about it in this sense, and it's sort of like, but the way she's describing it to him too, it's you get the sense that, you know, it's meant to mimic, or that film is considered very romantic, et cetera, tearjerker of a film. The way she's describing it, it almost sounds like she's talking about a friend of hers too.
Yes, I was confused about it for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, this redhead chick like fell in love with a poor guy on a ship, and then like everyone died except for her.
The things that she takes from that film tell you so much about who she is too.
That's always
the details.
That's always so much of the fun of talking to friends about films that they love, because you're just like, oh, I would not have looked at it that way. I'm really getting more of a window into your soul. You know?
Got to the class issues right away.
Exactly.
So all these experiences are meant to have this large emotional reaction to, or have some kind of big formative memory about. But this guy, we never see him being emotionally involved with these experiences really at all, like, or emotionally affected by them.
He's checking off a list.
They're task based. Yeah.
And that's going to come naturally from the fact that he remembers
doing them the first time.
Yeah, he's a fully formed, fully baked human being, and he doesn't. But it's also like, as much as he's sort of still, very practically speaking, he's developing new memories, even if it's not the first time. It's a new memory. It still seems to be doing what it needed to do for him. But this moment when he is confronted with somebody who's dying, who has a wife who's lost her memory. And the sensitivity to Allie, to what you were saying of like, you know, it's such a learned skill to take care of people who are grieving. And it often takes being a person who has gone through and experienced grief yourself to truly understand it. To know that it's okay to not know exactly what to say. Exactly. But how sensitive he is to this idea of like, maybe it's better that your wife doesn't remember anything because it'll be easier for her when you're gone. And just how... And then there's a moment too where you find out that he, you know, had a wife. This is the moment we find out he had a wife and that she died. And you can see him struggle with that truth, with that like whether or not to say that to this man. But this man is dying, so of course he needs to be absolutely honest with him, and it's his moment to share. And it is this thing where the experiment is meant to give him one thing, and he gains something else from that. And it's another thing where it's like, I don't know how you watch this movie just one time. Truly.
Yeah. That moment is, super revealing. Right before that, I think also was the time someone said that apples give you memory, and he was loading up a bag with apples, and he dumps that bag of apples and gets oranges instead.
Yeah, which
so he's like very obviously avoiding having a memory.
Yeah, he's not doing the preventative care anymore. He's like, please, disease, come get me. Take my memories away. The hospital scene too provides one of my favorite physical comedy moments as well, where it's clear there's a wet floor sign. It's clear the floor is wet. Somebody's just mopped it, and he's having to go door to door to kind of figure out who his companion is going to be for this next experiment. And he lifts his toes and only walks on his heels Because, like, very clearly, like, I want to make as small of an impression on this clean floor as possible, because it's just like we talk about what a careful, sensitive person he is. He's so thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a funny way to walk around. He's such a serious, like, you know, very focused, doing this thing, but he lifts his toes and walks like a child on his heels across this wet floor. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Which is also anxiety provoking for moms, because I'm going, you're going to fall. You're going to fall, dude. I spend entirely too much energy worrying about other people's injuries.
He seemed graceful enough to handle the heel walk.
Yeah, I think he'd bounce back.
Yeah. I'm just always impressed with people's physical abilities, because I have very little.
I feel that. So this dying guy also makes like a final request that he wants a pastry like the pastries his wife used to make. So this man goes home and like spends some time making a gorgeous pastry for this man. And when he comes back, the guy is gone. Yeah. So now he's lost another person in his life, but also didn't get to give that guy his last
wish
meal
thing.
I guess.
That made me so crazy. Yeah. Oh my God.
We should say too that while he is in the middle of making this very complicated, beautiful dessert that has to be made with so much dedication and love, his pal comes by and again asks him to join her on a very difficult mission, which is she's at the same point he is, where she has to go to this woman's funeral. But her description of it is, I think it's going to be so boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he can't with her.
It's like, screw you.
I can't. I'm done.
Like, are you kidding me? That's your reaction to a funeral? Like, of anyone. Yeah. It's going to be boring.
He's like, I'm busy.
Like, God. Yeah, that made me so anxious, because I was like, oh my God, make that pastry as soon as you can, because you need to get to the hospital. It made me so anxious before you even get there and find that he's gone. But it was like, and then she's interrupting him with like complaining about being, you know, it's an honor to be a part of something like that, to be there for other people, especially when it's not somebody that you had a connection with, really, you know?
Yeah.
Like, on the contrast of the two of them, like she is basically cheated on every one of the assignments. Like, she brought somebody with her on the car crash assignment. She had the one night stand with somebody that she was actually somewhat close to. He wasn't a complete stranger to her. And then tried to make amends with him afterwards, which was not the assignment.
Right.
And then on the funeral front, it's like she didn't actually learn anything from the assignment and now is too bored to go to the funeral.
That's a good perspective. I thought of that. Yeah.
She's a cut corners kind of person. The only thing she succeeded in is being totally terrified by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But even then, she's not sitting upright in her seat. She's trying to avoid watching it as much as possible.
Yeah. I can give her some grace for that.
It's one of my favorite movies, so I'm going, watch it. It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Your nightmares will only help you grow.
So all of these things are kind of slowly building up to make him realize how unsustainable this life is for him. He does still try and keep it up for a second. He goes to the funeral, he cries. He goes back home and starts to play the next tape, which just starts with like, go to a public place and find someone who's treating someone badly. And cuts it off there. We don't need to know whatever else was going to be on that tape.
I thought that he was rewinding it when we saw it. So it sounded like he was meant to go start a fight with somebody and defend someone. I remember getting...
Yeah, I figured that's where it was going to go, but I don't know, because based on the specificity of the last couple tasks leading up to this, I feel like there was going to be a lot more involved.
Yeah.
But we don't know, because we never hear it. Because he abandons the tape. He's eating an orange, which he also abandons. And he's like, I can't live this life that like is not me, is not what I want to be doing. I want to be eating my apples and
and it's creating pain for him that is not helpful.
Yes.
And it's even more lonely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like pain is unavoidable. I might as well live my own life where I've learned things from it already.
Where I have wonderful memories and a wonderful life.
And something to hold on to besides just the pain.
Yeah.
I want to talk about his fruit bowl for a second, though. When he does go back to his apartment and sneaks in, which that sequence to me is, first of all, the Charlie Chaplin leg.
Yes.
He his old lady neighbor comes out of her house, out of the door, and he doesn't have his keys, so he has to make sure that the door is propped open so he can get into the building.
Yes.
And he drops his leg fully like a ironing board on the step to stop the door, and it is the funniest way to stand and have like just a very casual conversation without either of them acknowledging how ridiculous it is that he's standing this way. It's so good.
She's just marveling at the door, though, like him wrenching his arm through that open window part was just
impressive.
So
very impressive. That guy must be a dancer or something.
Yeah, I got that feeling.
Kind of
too.
horrifying that somebody can do that,
Yes.
though. I was like, if I lived there, I would be scared of someone doing that at all times. This is horrifying.
Well, it was also just like, why is your door built like that? Why isn't there any glass? Why isn't there something?
I'm like, it's probably a Greek thing.
I know.
Maybe it was built before glass existed. Like, their shit's a little older than ours.
Glass existed.
This is the American perspective where we're like, oh, there's a vulnerability. Obviously, everyone's going to take advantage of that vulnerability.
Well,
you need to fix it.
Especially like, the two of us talking about our love of weird movies and horror films. That's what I always think. I'm always like, safety is an illusion.
Yeah.
I've had my house broken into. That's all I think about.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been
Horrifying.
a long time since that happened to me, but it's not fun. It's been
a long time for me
unsettling.
too, but I don't stop thinking about it. So he's giving up his it's hard to say, his forgotten life, the life where he has forgotten, and going towards the life that he was trying to forget.
There you go.
Okay, interesting.
Well, first of all, the interior is established with like all of his wife's beautiful.
There's lady stuff everywhere.
Yeah,
The
it's
shoes with the
shoes, hair
lingerie.
combs, purses. Like it's just
It's
stuff
everywhere.
that they did not show in the first glimpse of the apartment, but it's very clear that like she is still there with him and there's no way to get around it. And then he goes to this fruit bowl. That has been abandoned for how long now? And there's still viable fruit in it.
I was a little
did think
stumbling
about
on that
that,
one. Apples do last a long time, though.
It's the
I can
one flaw in
attest.
the film. It's the one flaw in the film.
It's a bit of a stretch.
He was able to find an apple that wasn't rotten to the point where he could still eat
Well, it's so symbolic.
Yeah.
I feel like we can forgive it because it's like, okay, the filmmaker is clearly being like, I know this is super symbolic. Strap in anyway. I'm going to still do this.
Speak for yourself, Alison.
There's still some good left, even in a bowl of rotten fruit.
You can still make something out of it. The other thing, too, I was so affected by was that his wife's things were set out that way. It was like the mystery was still there. There was so much mystery still. It's like, did she die suddenly? Was this what she was going to wear?
I
that
feel like
day?
dying suddenly was the vibe.
Yeah, and or is he putting her pretty things out to just
hope
have
not.
pretty things for her? Which is
I'm not going to think about that.
To me, it felt like
That's a little
dying
creepy,
suddenly. To
but-
me, it felt like she had her shit set up and she left the house and got hit by a car or something.
That was the feeling I got too. I think that's what we're supposed
I
to
feel
do.
like our sensitive friend would not put that stuff out intentionally.
One other thing was that when he was getting dressed to go back to his old house was that his apartment was really messy. And previously, when the lady was over, she had complimented him on how clean his place always was. So I feel like that was just another representation of him like losing it a little bit.
Yeah,
losing it where he was.
You slide back into whoever you are. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't suddenly become a different person because you get a new apartment or a new job or a new whatever. It takes time to build new habits, and he can't outrun himself in this moment.
Yeah.
And the sloppiness. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's a inherently sloppy person, but his living room at the top of the film, pretty sloppy, and it's grief sloppy, but he's clearly sliding back into that grief sloppy at the end.
Yeah. So, yeah, he goes back to his old house,
Beautiful.
starts cleaning up.
Eats a rotten apple.
Eats a perfectly good apple that he found in a bowl full of rotten ones, and starts making progress on moving forward, it seems. And then we roll credits, so that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I can think of one thing I didn't mention while we were going through this was that, and this is like kind of going back now, but on the social media commentary of it all, the director talked about how having those two doctors have basically free access to these people's apartments to come in and look through their pictures and comment on them in real time was like a metaphor for social media. Just like people coming in from wherever and you have no privacy and they go through your photos and comment on them. So that was just an interesting representation of that idea of like thinking of what does that mean if it's real and not digital.
Yeah, he's performing for them, like, and he's very aware of that as he's making these memories. These aren't just genuine moments of escape for him. It's like thinking about the audience constantly as he's doing it.
Yeah.
And what they want to see. And, you know, again, that moment where he realizes he was her one night stand and that it was programmed and not spontaneous between them. Part of his embarrassment seems to be like, you know, oh yeah, like taking a picture of myself after that thing that was supposed to be so spontaneous, and it's for these people. Who are these people?
Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting. Is there anything else that we didn't hit on that you guys wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, we started talking about the community of it all, and I really do think about like I think about the pop culture elements that I grew up with and the things that, you know, guilty pleasures a little bit, you know, like there's something very guilty pleasures about this. Like, you know, it's level setting everyone at the same taste level, you know, like they're watching the same movies, they're listening to the same music, they're given the same universal references.
Yeah.
And there is something about social media, if we're using that as a thematic in this, where people are so angry and at odds over taste, over things that are subjective, over things like thinking about Best Pictures, for instance, the Best Picture nominees and Best Actress nominees and things like that. It's just, there's so much vitriol and really people spew hate at each other over things that should be subjective and personal and taste. And this doesn't allow for that. Like the program doesn't allow for that. Like everyone's doing their own things. You can have opinions about these elements of the program or the film, but they're not even expressing their opinions about the film. They're just experiencing them and just experiencing life and finding common ground in the experience of it rather than their opinion of it.
I mean, I think inevitably if you're making a movie that is about loneliness, you know, because obviously it's, I think, more predominantly about grief, but I think there is a thing about loneliness and connection that's a huge theme in this movie.
It's kind of both.
That it's like, inevitably I can see why there would be, why he would be thinking about social media, because I think the whole goal of it is supposed to be to increase connection, but often does lead to increased loneliness. And for myself, I found it to be mostly a helpful situation, but I think you have to be really careful about how you curate it, and you have to get real lucky on top of that. So I do get that that's a loaded thing that I think is worth always examining, but for me, I'm glad that he let that be more of a sort of metaphor or an inspiration point than something that he was hitting as hard, you know?
Yeah, I totally appreciate this film without ever thinking about social media while watching it. Like I watched it twice now, and when you said there was this idea of it being about social media and
no idea
place or reaction, you know, it's like I could love this film all day long and never think that about this.
But it's always fascinating, just like with, you know, this was my first feature that just came out, and it's like hearing from things that people got from the film that no matter how much we thought about our film as we were making it, never occurred to me. There was just some of these things that people have brought back to you, and then vice versa, where I feel like there's got to be some of these things that I'm saying in interviews or whatever, or to people when they see it, that they're like, oh okay. I didn't get that, you know?
Well, and I think along those lines too, it's like, you know, when you read the reviews of your own films, people go in with their own idea of what the film is, whether it's the trailer, whether it's just their own experience as a film goer. Some of the reviews, it was clear that, like, you know, some people just, not everybody's going to like the same stuff. That is totally the beauty of the world that we live in. When people don't like your film because it's not what they thought the film should be. That is a different thing. That's like, you know, the beauty of this character that we just watched. It's like we went in with knowing nothing about him and got to know him. And that was great. And we took away from it probably some of our own personal stuff and interpretation of, obviously, of who he is. But at the end of the day, we also are able to let him be who he is because we know nothing about him.
Absolutely.
It is one thing as a filmmaker, to try something and feel like, oh, people didn't get what I was trying to do.
Yes.
And it's another thing where it's like, that person was never going to get what I was trying to do. This was not the film for them. You don't make a movie for every person in the world. You make it for you, your audience, and whatnot. But it's I don't know how to tie that thought up necessarily, but to say like,
well, and
that's the beauty of the subjective.
Going into watching a film, hoping to be surprised, hoping to be led in a different place than you expect, you know?
Yeah, I always say, why do we feel like we have like the right to set expectations on a film or of a filmmaker or like of a story? Like, why can't it just be whatever somebody else, whoever made it wants it to be? Like, why do we think that we get to say it should be this way or that way, or, you know? So if somebody's saying this movie didn't go the way I think it should, or the way I wanted this type of movie to be, or something like that, I always hate that. But I like watching weird stuff because you can't expect anything. You go in thinking this person's going to do something off the wall. I don't know what it's going to be or where it's going to go.
For a different
but it's
reason.
going to be something different. Yeah. And that's what I want. I don't want to know what's coming.
Yeah, you're watching a movie. Yes, you're watching a movie hoping they surprise you and letting that and disappointed when they don't.
So you're my favorite kind of audience because it's like, that's exactly what I feel like, you know, that's something I think Kim and I have in common, where it's like we're trying, you know, as much as I love sort of, you know, the idea of a movie kind of working within certain conventions and you feel comforted by them and now you're still along for the story. I think for the most part, what's exciting is more like, you know, let's blow that up and forward the conversation as much as we can and do something, you know, surprising. And I think he really succeeded with this film. I think he took this kind of idea and brought it to a very quiet, as Kim keeps saying, patient place. There's a lot of compassion.
And you can still ground it in something familiar and nostalgic, and like we had Polaroids as kids, you know, we had tapes and stuff like that. It's still meant to have that aspect of like nostalgia in it, even though it's strange and weird and off the wall and surprising, and you can't really put you couldn't plug a formula onto this and expect it to fit into that.
Yeah, it's high concept, but at the end of the day, it's about people and their feelings.
Good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff.
So I think we've pretty much wrapped the film. So now we get to the part where we rate it out of 5. So what do you guys think?
I'll start then, because I was thinking about this actually, because this is a hard one to rate for me because I think it's such an accomplished movie and I was definitely affected, but I wouldn't say it's one of my new favorites kind of level. So I really respected it and really got a lot out of it. But there was something about it that I just ultimately didn't worship, I guess. So I think for that, I'd say like a 4 or a 4.5, like something where you're like, this is an outstanding film, but I don't love it at the level that I would give a 5.
Your rating is so perfectly encapsulates who you are. You just made me think you were about to give this movie a 2 or a 1. That setup was bonkers and perfect.
It's so subjective rating something.
You were almost apologetic. You were so apologetic for like, I didn't love it. A nearly perfect score.
Honestly, for me, it's because it's like, I don't have any criticisms of the movie. Like, I think it's a great film. I think it's so accomplished. I think it's doing something, again, with this kind of situation that we do not see. I think it has so much class.
But you're only going to watch it 3 more times. And therefore, it's a 4.5.
Yeah, you still have to be my mother, who continues to watch shows she doesn't like because they worked so hard. Like,
oh my god.
Yeah. So, what would you rate it as, Kim? Now it's going to be really funny if your rating is low.
Oh my god. Well, I love that this is my one shot at rating on this show, and so I'm just gonna like completely go for it and give it a 5 out of 5 because I have nothing to compare it to. I love the cinematography. I love the performances. I love the writing. I love the choices in editing. Yeah. I loved the score. I loved everything about it. It's a movie I will go back to as chicken noodle soup for the soul.
Right on.
Very often. Mm-hmm. And I think as far as like what I'm looking for in a film too, it also gave me a lot of hope for what filmmakers can do when they just remember why we make films. And don't,
because it's not huge.
No, it's not fancy. It's not fancy.
Yeah.
It's not huge. The locations are sparse, and every one of them is important. The cast is sparse, and every person is important and there for a reason. Mm-hmm. Every line of dialogue is there for a reason. People don't talk when they don't need to be talking. The one person that's a little bit chatty is the person who's like, our not so favorite lady in the film, who, she's the one cutting the corners and not acting like a good citizen of the world necessarily. It's all intentional. It's such an intentional film. I loved it.
Yeah. I really do love the film. I do think it has a ton of rewatch value, which I think is rare. I'm not usually a movie rewatcher, it's got to be amazing for me to be rewatching. So I think that's really valuable. I think the ideas are really valuable. I'm teetering between 4.5 and 5. I don't know why I still feel like maybe there's something a little, like it's a little too vague. I wish it could be like a little more specific or a little more involved, although I also understand why it can't. So
you also have more history with this particular show that we're on, and you can't just set it at 5.
Perfect.
Like, where do you go from there?
I mean, I am a rare 5.
Oh. I
am a rare 5. Like, I don't give out 5s very often. It does really have to be really special. But I am teetering. I'm between 4.5 and 5 on this one. Because I really don't know if I could, like, pinpoint something specifically that I would change or any way that you could change it to make it better.
You're going on guts. You're going
really
on guts. You're not trying to remake his movie. You're just going on your gut.
But if I'm not going to give it a perfect score, I'd like to have a reason why, and I just don't know if I do. Maybe the social media stuff is a little on the nose.
There you go.
I already said I don't love that stuff. Yeah, so that's what I think. I'll say 4.5 solidly.
4.5 for a hokey theme that makes total sense.
But it's really good.
It's so good.
And it has a lot of rewatch value.
Wouldn't it be funny if I picked this film and then I gave it like a 1?
It happens, right? Because sometimes you have people on and they're like, I don't really like this
It does
movie.
happen.
Like, I listened to your Maniac episode, and I think he was like 1 or 2 or something.
Whoa, somebody
picked that without having seen it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I usually pick movies without having seen them if I can, because I think the discussion's usually more valuable, or like even if you don't like a movie, it's still valuable to discuss why you don't. It's still interesting conversation.
Yeah.
So I don't think I have to like love every movie that I do for the podcast. It's me doing a movie for the podcast is not necessarily a cosign.
Sure.
Usually I haven't seen them when I pick them or when somebody else has picked them. I haven't seen them yet.
That's interesting. I did pick this because I loved it and I wanted to share it, and I don't.
And some people go with that mode too. That's
fine. I don't always have that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And I also, and I'm not saying because I'm not on podcasts all the time. That's not what I mean. I mean because like I am so keenly aware of how often I am disappointed by films.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to talk publicly about something and share it with friends, I want it to be something that I know that they'll enjoy.
But I think criticism can be good and valuable too, and then people can learn why they fucked up and how to make it better and what we are disliking about what they're doing.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's also valuable.
Yeah, listen to us, world. Get your act together, everybody.
I think
This
it's
is how you
also
really
like
make a movie.
I had been on Letterboxd before, but like right at the New Year, I got COVID. My whole family and I got COVID, and so I just all I could do was watch movies, which was sort of like both fantasy and frustrating. But and then I got into Letterboxd in terms of just logging and putting things on, and then I found that like before I would write these reviews about things that I watched, and then after having put my film out, I've been so sensitive about that. I've been so like, I don't want to put out, I don't even want to low rate something on Letterboxd.
You're afraid they're going to see it?
Yeah. I don't want to like, it's like, unless I feel like something was genuinely like, I don't know how to put it. If it was like, the film was mean-spirited in the wrong way, like in a, or something like that, but it's like, other than that, it's like,
you just know what a miracle it is to make any movie, and you don't want to.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. I don't want to.
You don't want the filmmakers to think you don't appreciate everything that goes into it. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you can lovingly criticize something.
Absolutely. Yes. You absolutely could. I think what I'm saying is it's just a specific place that I'm at emotionally, having just put this thing out and trying to, like continue to make things where it's like, I just feel so like, I feel for you, man. I just want to like high five you that you made it. And then we can have a conversation about where maybe I thought it succeeded and didn't. Like, I have no problem giving critique. It was just sort of like suddenly the aspect of doing it publicly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when a film is done,
it's harder when
hard.
it's written, too.
Yeah.
People don't ever confront me about things I've said on the podcast, but I have had my Letterboxd reviews. I have been approached with them.
You need more, if you know what I means, and exclamation marks. And then you'll be fine.
But this is long form. It's like, you have chosen to sit here for a while and listen to what I gotta say. You made this bed. But if you just scroll on, if you're just scrolling on Letterboxd, it's a lot easier to go, well, this person said my shit sucks or whatever. You know, I'm gonna find them on Instagram and DM them about it.
Oh,
I love that you persist, though. And Allie, I do hope you can find your criticism horse once again and get back on it.
I do it person to person. It's just public. It's public is the part. But where I
get
sensitive.
It, especially with Letterboxd, because you know the filmmakers are sitting there reading their reviews. That I think should be illegal. Sorry, because you are a filmmaker who's reading your reviews, but I think it should be illegal. I don't think it's healthy.
I think it is healthy to the point that you're making.
Feelings. Yeah.
Allie and I talked about the criticism around her film, and you know, there are raves, and then there are people that did not get it or did not like it for whatever reason. Yeah. And one of the things about criticism that I do love, especially if it's your first feature, is that you get to see if the thing you were putting out there was understood. If you, as a filmmaker, communicated effectively the thing that you wanted to. And what are the ways that you didn't? What are the ways that you didn't express the thing in the exact way that you needed to for people to understand it? And how valuable is that? Like, not to put value on dumbing something down for people, but like, then there's sometimes you made a mistake and you missed something that would have connected that tissue for people, that would have made it possible for them to cross the bridge with you and understand exactly what you were going for. And so many times when you write something and then you direct it and then you edit it, that thing that you know is supposed to be there gets lost in translation, and you get to see it in the reviews. that thing that I thought was there and was there at script level was not there when we got to the end of it all.
Yeah.
It's really important to be able to read that stuff, but to be able to read it with the idea that, like, you're not going to please everybody. And some people in criticism are fabulous, wonderful people who are kind, great writers who just really love film and want to talk about it and need a job. And, you know, and then there are some people who it's just like they live for hurting other people, and criticism as a profession is like their way of getting back at the world in some way. And those people are not even worth following, or like they really shouldn't have jobs. Like, you know, it's like when a teacher doesn't like kids or something. Yeah. It's like, just get that person out of here. Because if you can't give credit, you know, it's like, I know some films make me angry and I feel anger towards the filmmakers that made them, but I am not going to punish them with my anger unless it's like truly like a fascist person or somebody who deserves to be called out in that way. But like, truly, it's like,
or ask a question of it in what you're writing up, as opposed to just coming with
you can't ask questions like that.
Vitriol, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. And so it was funny when you said the thing about social media, my immediate thought was like, oh, he had this big idea that didn't translate. I felt kind of bad for him, but I was also like, no, but it's a layer that's in there for him that we take however we want to take it.
It's not on the nose.
So it's like, it's an interesting thing.
It does it without beating you over the head with, this is what this film is about. And that's what you should do with movies.
He does ultimately, he ties it together with the thing with grief and with the thing of how he's presenting people using social media. Ultimately, he ties it together. It's like people are choosing to live life through their phones, to watch everything through their phones, devoid of emotion, not living in the moment, not feeling or experiencing what's happening around them. But also, this is why that could seem appealing, but ultimately it doesn't work, right?
Yeah,
like,
we don't...
That could seem appealing to live that way because we don't want to feel this shit that sucks. We don't want to feel the grief.
Yeah, like when I take these little self-writing retreats where I go to a hotel or somewhere for a weekend or however long, and I always take like just a couple photos of the room because it gives me, sometimes if I'm writing later, it gives me like peace thinking about a peaceful, uninterrupted writing session. Maybe that's too inside baseball, but it's like, it's those kinds of, it's like you can process your experiences however you want.
Yeah.
As long as you're allowing yourself to experience them, you know?
Yeah, we need to have grace for how people process things, for sure.
Yeah.
Now it's time for ScreenVomit.
On this part of the pod, we just talk about whatever else we've been watching. So movies or shows or whatever else you've been watching lately. What y'all got?
So much. I like
pick a couple.
So my favorite thing I've seen lately, or one of two, was Resurrection with Rebecca Hall. I love this movie. Have you guys seen this one yet? It's
I think I've heard of it.
It's also on Shudder, and it's basically about this woman. She's a mother to a teenage daughter. And I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say that she encounters a very
I've seen this poster.
dangerous ex and has a very extreme reaction to that. And it's her and Tim Roth plays the dangerous ex. And it is so, again, it's like, how do I speak in semi-code before, like, because it's part of what's great about this movie is as with any movie, but especially this movie, is the ongoing surprise of how crazy it gets. Like, Kayla, I think for different reasons, you both would really love this film. And Rebecca Hall gives this really committed performance. And also I noticed in the credits that the hair department head is the same as on our film, Stephanie Turzo. And she does another fantastic job on that film. So I love Resurrection.
It's been on my watch list. I haven't watched it yet, though.
It's one of those, like, I was like, how am I going to sleep? This is so good. Like, so inspiring.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. How about you? What you got, Kim?
Well, this is a thing. I just admitted to you all that I'm frequently disappointed by things. So it's the...
Are you scared to say?
Well, no, it's the thing where it's like, I want to talk about something that I love right now because I feel like this is a moment to recommend something.
Yeah.
But I think the last thing that I watched besides this, that I was like, truly, this is great. I'm enjoying this and I want to share it. I watched Fleischman is in Trouble, series on Hulu. The writing, so it's one that I felt entirely frustrated with for the first episode or two, because it's a show about a divorce. It has a fantastic cast and fantastic writing, and you're seeing this divorce from the male perspective, from the perspective of one person, and you're seeing it told through a narrator perspective, his best friend, and her telling what she is seeing of the divorce, which is his side of it. And so that it becomes really frustrating at first to know that that's the perspective, that you're seeing this kind of entitled dude's view of this divorce, and that you're missing some pieces that you can feel are there and are really important to telling the whole story of this divorce and this couple. And then you start getting those pieces and it is beautiful. And you start to realize that the title is not just about him and that there are pieces that they have missed in each other. And it's the most beautiful telling of a divorce that I've seen in a really long time. And just of people who have these long-term relationships with each other, where you think that you know everything about a person, and yet you can absolutely not know anything about them because of these preconceived notions of who they are or your expectations of them or whatever else. And it just explores so much in such a short amount of time. I mean, I think it's 6 to 8 episodes. So it doesn't feel like a lot of time in the scheme of TV, but then, compared to a feature, obviously they've got like a ton of time to go on little meandering walks, but it really talks a lot to a specific generation of women. I think a little bit, if you've grown up as a woman who maybe you were the only woman in your male group of friends and you sort of went along with certain opinions or whatever to kind of survive in this male dominated world. It really speaks to like the dangers of that and the internalized misogyny that comes with that, and somebody kind of crawling their way out of it as a woman and as a mother. And it's fantastic. It's great. I mean, it has some flaws that we can discuss on another day, but I recommend it.
But you loved it. Hell
I
yeah.
loved it too. I have to second recommend that. I loved it. I was so moved by it. It says,
Wow, a double
yeah,
rec.
it says so much about, well, this is a bit of a cheat because she recommended it to me and then I watched it.
Oh, okay.
So that's a real direct line. But yeah, it just says so much about the experience of middle age and the sort of checkpoint that it provides, whether you like it or not, you know? It's a very compelling subject matter, but yeah, love that.
Hell yeah.
How about you? What have you seen lately that you are loving
I've watched a few things.
or not loving? Right? You can say either one, right?
I could say either one, but actually I do have a whole list of stuff that I loved this week. All right, I watched a couple things. So Brandon Cronenberg just had a new film, but I actually watched his first film, Possessor.
I still have to see it.
Uncut. I watched the uncut version, which I had never seen the normal one, so all I have in my brain is the uncut
Well,
version.
of course, you would go right to the uncut version, and I admire that in you.
But my understanding is it's way more violent and way more graphic nudity than the normal version. So I thought it was awesome. I loved it. I thought it was so sick. I was tearing up. I thought it was so cool. I saw it in the theater. So I recommend Possessor. I saw the other one too. Didn't hit the same.
Infinity Pool?
Yeah. It's fine.
I loved Possessor.
After seeing Possessor the week before, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
But that's another story. That wasn't on my list. Infinity Pool.
I love how moved you were by Possessor, though. I mean, I couldn't stop smiling when I watched it, even though it was like, yeah, it's the film that it is. But when somebody's doing, you can tell somebody's truly gifted at what they're doing. It really brought a lot of joy, oddly.
It was amazing.
Yeah. It's dark. It's dark as hell.
It's dark. And the uncut version, I can't speak for the normal one. Again, I don't know about the normal one. It seemed like people were underwhelmed by the normal one. But the uncut version, I mean, just had like some really cool gore in it. The whole ideas of it were cool. I loved the uncut version.
I don't know if I could watch it a second time to fit the uncut version into my life, but I'm going to live vicariously through you.
Okay. Just take my word for it. If you liked the normal one, though, then maybe you're not missing out. But I just know, like, when I was, like, reading my friends' reviews of Possessor, like, on Letterboxd and stuff, they seemed a little underwhelmed. And there were, like, specific scenes they mentioned that I was like, oh, the uncut version was not like
they
how
didn't
they're
hold
saying
back.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I really want to say I saw the uncut version.
Well, and it's interesting.
I don't know what the normal version was.
Because I always think, usually we tend to think the director's cut, the uncut version is like going to be the better one, the more, all the way kind of film. And then you look at something like Donnie Darko, where it's like, I don't know that Richard Kelly knew what was special about his film. Like, it was like...
There is such a thing as, like, a filmmaker getting lost in the sauce. Like, they think everything's important. They can no longer delineate, like...
What do you mean? I don't know
be
what that's
cut or
like.
what shouldn't. I mean, it exists, and I'm sure that is, like, a really hard thing to contend with. But that's why you test it so much.
Yeah, very
part
classically.
Of the process.
Very classically. One of my favorite films is Until the End of the World, that Wim Wenders film. That, like, the first version of I saw was 3 hours, and then only recently saw the 5-hour version, which is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's like, who would have thought? But of course, it's, there were ideas that he had to kill for a 3-hour version of the film that was palatable for audiences at the time.
That's so wild.
I think with Possessor 2, part of the reason why some of the stuff was cut was for ratings purposes. Like, it would have made it NC-17 or something, so he had to cut because it was fucked up. Okay, I have a couple more. Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's of course okay, yeah.
We're just coming out of Slam Dance. Slam Dance, as of recording anyway, was like last week or something. So I saw 2 things at Slam Dance that I gotta mention because they were so amazing. One short film called Write a Song About Heartache, which is by Johnny Locke. I've probably talked about on pod before because he has a couple other shorts that are some of my favorites in the world. Write a Song About Heartache was so good. He just has these like freaky, crazy little ideas, and I'm always excited when Johnny's got a new movie out. So that was an amazing short. And then a feature, a Belgian movie called Mascot by Remy Van Houten. I heard nobody talking about this movie. It barely even has any views on Letterboxd. I watched it because I liked the poster, and I thought it was so good. I don't know if you guys have seen any Xavier Dolan movies like Mommy or I Killed My Mother.
Yeah.
Have you seen those movies?
No, but I feel like I have seen. I know of him, and maybe that's what it is.
He's done a lot of stuff. He also acts and stuff. So I
think there were some mommy references in Jack, our DP's lookbook for the apology also.
So Mommy and I Killed My Mother are like two movies that are 5 stars for me. Like, I love those two movies so much, and Mascot kind of reminded me of those two movies, except darker and a little more violent. Belgian film always goes off. Every Belgian film I've seen has been amazing. So
Jean Dielman.
Mascot was just so good.
I love that I came into your podcast where your recommendations are like also being rated on how violent and gory they are, and I'm like, oh guys, you gotta see Fleischman in Trouble. It's a movie about divorce. You're gonna love it.
Well, it's always like
sexual politics at their finest. Come on.
Those things are good too.
That's the thing.
Like, Write a Song About Heartache isn't violence.
Okay, good.
Well,
kind of. It's all
violent towards a bug.
It's all hard stuff, though. I mean, it's emotional violence versus physical. You know, it's pretty intense stuff happens. And Fleischman's in trouble.
I appreciate emotional movies too. We watch Apples.
Oh yeah.
But I do appreciate when violence is used well.
Yes.
Also. So not all violence is good violence. Okay. Okay, just one more. I watched the Mike Leigh film Naked, which I had never seen, but it's from the early 90s or something.
That decade.
I loved that movie so much, but I think I've already said I'm a real sucker for late 80s and early 90s disturbing, bleak British freak dramas. So it really is a shame I haven't watched this movie sooner, because
that's another film that was in some of our references for the apology as well. I think from a design perspective and a lighting perspective.
Yeah, which is funny because I still haven't seen it, but it was showing up in our references. Yeah, that's a viewing gap for me. I've seen a lot of his other films and loved them. I just haven't seen that one.
I've only seen one other Mike Leigh film at this point, I think, which is it's the one that also has the two guys we mentioned earlier. Meantime.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Have you seen Meantime?
No.
Which has Tim Roth and Gary Oldman in it.
These are films I have not seen.
I think I have seen that
a very long time.
Yeah, it's like bringing that film school and right after kind of feelings back.
Meantime, I loved, but that's the only other Mike Leigh film I've seen, and everybody's like, "Why aren't you watching Mike Leigh films? I feel like you would love them." Oh, I did watch Another Year too. I didn't love that one as much.
I like that one,
but I mean, it's fine. I just didn't think it was like so amazing that I need to watch it again. when I do think that about these other two films, that's why. Compared to Naked, well, especially Naked, but Meantime is also like really, really good. Naked's like amazing. David Thewlis in Naked is so crazy, so good. So compared to those, Another Year is like whatever.
It's a little
even though I do think Another Year is a good movie.
It's a little,
I think it's good.
Yeah, well,
but compared to those movies are like amazing. So.
Well, I haven't seen Naked, but from what I've heard, it is a little bit like comparing Possessor to Fleischman is in Trouble. Like, they're both great. Both have a lot of compelling things, but the tone is very different from what I've heard. Speaking of a weird tone thing, I have a specific short to recommend that I watched that I thought was really the kind of thing I do not normally like. It's called Meat Friend. It's a short film by a filmmaker named Izzy Lee, and I really liked this film. It's very strange. It's basically about this little girl who makes a little kid mistake of trying to cook something the wrong way. She tries to cook meat in a microwave, and it becomes a sentient little monster. And it's but it feels they've taken this weird, like, sentient little meat monster and put it in like a sort of faux Full House show. And I don't know how to describe it exactly to get the tone right, but the tone of this is so weird. And it's like the fact that it's obviously a low budget short really helps it, because it just feels like a different thing than I've seen before. And the meat friend is constantly trying to educate her on how to, live in this hard world, and teaching her how to make things look like an accident and so forth. It's pretty funny.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, you probably love Johnny Looks movies if that sounds cool to you.
Yeah, well, again, it's when it's successful.
Write a Song About Heartache is about a guy who relies on a slug that lives in his drawer to write hit songs for him.
I did really like Basket Case. So there, I guess there is a part of my heart that will accept such nonsense. But yeah, very often I'm like, okay. But this one I thought was a real
He has
fun.
another movie about people who torture plants to get them to talk. They're like, we know plants can talk, but they won't do it unless we torture them. It's called Assholes. It's a short film. It's 10 minutes. It's really good.
I gotta see that because I feel like that's my relationship with plants inadvertently. I love them. I want them around.
The ways they torture these plants are like amazing. There's like one lady who really cares for the plants and she's so nice to the plants, and her husband also works in the lab, and they like make the plants watch him cheat on her. It's like one of the ways they torture them. But they also do like normal like burning the plants or ways that would be painful to the plants, or like eat lettuce right in front of them or stuff like that.
Do they get the plants to talk?
To get them to talk.
You gotta watch the movie, Kim. God.
Okay. You gotta watch the movie. It's only 10 minutes. It's called Assholes, directed by Johnny Lip.
I just want Kayla to tell me the plot and the entirety of every film ever from now on.
Watch this short. It's so good.
It's efficient. It's bringing me a lot of joy.
I mean, I would like to do that. Just maybe after I see it, then I want to hear the whole thing recited. Yeah, I used to do that to my mother all the time. Here's the whole movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone on this screen has already seen Bones and All, but that is another recommendation. Yeah. It's another thing where it was like, oh, this film was everything I wanted it to be and more. I loved it so much. And
I really liked Bones and All, too.
I left, again, unable to talk to my friend group that I was with about my feelings about it. I wanted to just sit with it and be there in that feeling, even though it is...
I thought Timothée Chalamet did a really good job in that movie, too. I mean, both the main people did, but he always gets weird amounts of hate. Or
Does he?
I don't know.
I feel like I never hear...
people are averse to him.
He also gets Oscar nominations, so I think he's doing okay.
I mean, from people who like, he's fine, okay? He's a millionaire, like 18-year-old or whatever he is. He's fine.
He's amazing.
But I just mean from like people who like consider themselves to be like into film or whatever.
I know what you mean. There's always like somebody doing great stuff. There's always going to be some posse of folks being dicks.
Yes, I think that is a thing where it's
I just think it's undue.
Yes, there's clearly this person who is talented and effective and really moves people. Yeah. I'm gonna find something wrong with this. I am gonna be
on beautiful things.
I'm gonna be the voice of reason. You 50 years from now are going to thank me for taking this kid down.
Yeah,
this kid. That's the other thing. Yeah. It's like, you're like 40.
But
why are you mad about a teenager?
Well, yes, there's that too.
He is.
Anyway, that's another topic.
He and Taylor Russell in that. It's the casting of the two of them. The characters are there on paper. The characters are there with even more in the people who are playing them. There is a vulnerability. It's like I want them to fall in love and have that love, and I'm so scared for them to fall in love at the same time.
Yes.
It was a really surprising movie.
I've never seen anything like it in a sense. It's like, it uses the same language of cinema that we all have seen, and some... there's things that are there that we've seen in other films, but it's just done in this way that is especially cognizant of how an audience is going to feel and is so sensitive and kind and showing something so dark at the same time. It's lovely.
Yeah. My only beef with the movie is that there's a character with my name and they say her name so many times. It's like every time they want to talk about her, they say her name.
That's the sister, right?
It's never just like she did this or your sister did that. Yeah. It's always like, no, where's Kayla? I thought Kayla would be in the room because I just talked to Kayla, and then I did. It's like they're saying her name like way too many times in a sentence.
Yeah, I loved that because I thought that was so like a shorthand for I love my sister, and like I love my sister, and so I'm just gonna say her name.
My name is so rarely in films; it always bothers me. But it really bothers me when they say it too much.
I love it. I
never heard my name in a movie until 2018 in my entire life, and I'm born in the 80s.
Wow,
I'm not gonna say when. I'm born in the 80s. I never heard my name in a film or a TV show until 2018, and then it was in two things in the same year. And I only remember what one of them was, which was Blockers, the movie with John Cena.
We are entering our Kayla era.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden we're like, it's popular.
It's going to replace all the Hannahs and Annas.
I'm not a fan, all right? I'd like to be the only one. When I was in school, I made other people named Kayla go by something else.
Can you copy...
That's not a joke. I wish it was, but that's true.
can you somehow legally protect your name so that anyone that wants to use it in a film has to pay you money?
Trademark it.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Note to self, never
like to be
use
the
her
one.
name.
You can call me my name, but other people are not allowed to.
Never
Or name-
use their name. Yeah.
Name a character Kayla, but make sure no one ever says that character's name.
See, I'd be okay with that. That might be okay.
Like it-
or
like
maybe
in
say it one
Apples.
time and never again.
In
just
Apples,
credited,
they
but,
don't
yeah.
say his name, do they?
I don't think so.
No, none of the characters in Apples have names except for the dead wife.
Yeah.
But they also, since they like forgot their identity or whatever, would they forget their name? Probably.
Hell yeah, they would.
They never talked about like picking a new one though. That could have been a cool part.
Watching them pick their names, learning so much about them by the name that they pick.
Yeah, could have been interesting. But yeah, none of the characters
Yeah,
had names.
okay. So maybe I'm going to 4 out of 5 here. He really missed an opportunity there.
I mean,
All right.
We've been talking about this for a few hours. He had months or perhaps years. And he didn't think about the name thing.
Truly, he could have figured it
Fucked
out.
up.
So go. What do you got to plug? Where can people find you?
Allie, show me how it's done.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter. Yes, I'm still there. I feel conflicted, but I'm still there. And Instagram and TikTok under Alison Locke. And please go see The Apology. You can see it on Shudder. You can see it on AMC Plus. You can see it if you buy or rent it on VOD. You can make a viewing party in case you would like to watch this kind of movie with a viewing party. Write me,
party.
write me and tell me what you think. Even if it's not all glowing, I want to hear what you think.
But make it
And,
constructive, please.
Yeah, don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. But I mean, that was inferred.
My people would not be dicks.
Yeah, no, people have been very lovely. When I get messages, the worst I've ever gotten was more just like, okay, that was really specific what you liked about it, and you didn't. There was no like. Sometimes I'll get one where it's like, I love this one part. You're like, okay, did you like the rest of the film? That was the weirdest it got. I've been very fortunate. People have not been sending me vitriol, so that's nice. Oh, I also will shamelessly plug podcasts that I'm on frequently, even though one of them is not related and one I do not make. I'm just on a lot. So my husband and I make a podcast called Sensory Overload, talking about being parents of a kid on the spectrum, and has lots of cuss words, so not too precious. And then I'm also on a podcast that he does called The Holdup, which, funny enough, is a podcast about memory. About how we revisit the films that we used to love and see what it means to us now. And there you go. That's my plugs.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Kim?
I'm a pretty private person, but I am on social media. I'm Kimbatotron on both Instagram and Twitter. Twitter, I let anyone follow me. I am pretty open about it. I think it might be set to private. I'm not sure, but I'm a little I'm more loosey-goosey about who can follow me there. Instagram, it's mostly my family and politics, and so I'm a little more selective. So feel free to find me if you are a nice person and you want to see pictures of my cute family.
Hell yeah. And you both have a whole history of other things you've done that they can look up.
Yeah.
Yes. Go
Follow
see the
me on IMDb
with the mini H's.
and Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Yeah, Letterboxd. I'm Alison Starlock on Letterboxd too.
Yeah, I have a website for professional if people want to, reach out professionally or see other films that I've made. And then, mostly we have The Apology out together, and then there's just constant work on new things that are too early to talk about now.
Hell yeah, but they're coming.
They're coming. Always.
All right, well, thank you both for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you. I'm such a
having
big
us.
fan of yours. I love your
Thank you.
I love your Instagram presence. I hate saying that, but it's true. It's just like
People say it a lot and they always feel weird about it.
it's just it feels like a bad comedy writer wrote the dialogue for us. But
I do appreciate it.
Yeah, it was when we were talking about places we should be to talk about our film together. Yours was the one I was like, I really want to talk to this lady. She's cool.
Aw.
And I'm so grateful you did. This was such a fun conversation, and it led to me listening to, right before this, listening to so many of your episodes of your podcast, and I think it's just so thoughtful.
Thank you.
And so, good deep dives, but also you're just so generous with your guests, like just how genuinely curious you are about people and letting them feel the way that they want to feel about whatever it is that they've seen. I thought that was really cool.
Welcoming them into your rating system. I mean, what an honor.
Thank you. You guys are so nice. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I don't know what to say now. That's all for the show.
Bye.
Let's go forth into the rest of our day with smiles on our faces.
Mine's almost over. It's already